Kings and Queens. The Power Struggles of Medieval Europe, written by A.J.Kingston, narrated by Medicine May. Introduction. The medieval period was a time of great change and transformation in Europe, marked by the rise and fall of powerful kingdoms and the struggles of kings and queens to secure their positions of power. The power struggles of medieval Europe were shaped by a complex web of political, religious, and military factors, and they helped to define the cultural, political, and social landscape of the time. Kings and queens played a central role in the power struggles of medieval Europe, as they wielded great influence and power over their kingdoms and subjects. Through their military conquests, political alliances, and religious policies, they shaped the course of European history and helped to define the cultural, political, and social landscape of the time. This book explores the power struggles of medieval Europe, and it examines the actions and ambitions of the kings and queens who ruled during this time. It looks at the major events and developments of the medieval period, including the Crusades, the Black Death, and the Reformation, and it explores the ways in which these events shaped the power struggles of the time. The book also examines the lives and legacies of some of the most influential kings and queens of medieval Europe, including Richard the Lionheart, Eleanor of Aquitaine, and Henry VIII, and it explores the ways in which their actions and ambitions helped to shape the course of European history. In conclusion, this book provides a comprehensive and engaging exploration of the power struggles of medieval Europe, and it offers a unique and fascinating look at the lives and legacies of the kings and queens who ruled during this time. Whether you are a student of history, a lover of medieval literature, or simply someone who is interested in the power struggles of the past, this book provides a rich and engaging look at one of the most fascinating and important periods in European history. Chapter 1. From Rome to the Barbarian Kingdoms, the story of the fall of the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire, once a mighty and powerful force, began its decline in the 3rd century AD. The reasons for this decline were many, including economic instability, political turmoil, and military challenges from barbarian tribes. By the 5th century AD, the empire was on the brink of collapse, and a series of barbarian invasions sealed its fate. The barbarians, who were considered uncivilized by the Romans, were actually a diverse group of tribes with their own languages, cultures, and traditions. Some of the most well-known barbarian tribes include the Visigoths, the Ostrogoths, the Franks, and the Vandals. The fall of the Roman Empire was a complex process that took place over several centuries. In the 4th century AD, the empire began to split into two halves, with the Western Roman Empire centered in Rome and the Eastern Roman Empire centered in Constantinople. The Western Empire, which was weaker and more vulnerable, was the first to fall. In 410 AD, the Visigoths, led by their king Alaric, sacked the city of Rome, marking the first time in over 800 years that the city had been captured by an enemy. The fall of Rome was a major turning point in the history of the Western Roman Empire, and many historians consider it to be the beginning of the end. Over the next few decades, the Western Roman Empire continued to decline, and a series of barbarian tribes carved out their own kingdoms in its former territories. The Visigoths established a kingdom in Spain, the Franks established a kingdom in France, and the Vandals established a kingdom in North Africa. The Eastern Roman Empire, which became known as the Byzantine Empire, survived for another 1,000 years, but the fall of the Western Roman Empire marked the end of the Roman Empire as a unified entity. The rise of the barbarian kingdoms had a profound impact on the history of Europe. The barbarian tribes brought with them new languages, cultures, and traditions, and the kingdoms they established would eventually become the modern nations of Europe. Overall, the fall of the Roman Empire and the rise of the barbarian kingdoms was a complex and transformative process that changed the course of European history. It marked the end of an era of Roman dominance and the beginning of a new era of cultural and political diversity. Today, we continue to study and learn from this pivotal moment in history, and its impact can still be felt in the modern world. The Roman Empire, from humble beginnings to world power. The Roman Empire is one of the most significant and influential civilizations in history, and its legacy can still be felt in modern times. The origins of the Roman Empire can be traced back to the 8th century BC, when a small settlement on the Tiber River in central Italy began to grow and expand. The early Roman Republic was a relatively small and insignificant city-state, but it gradually began to expand its territory and influence. The Roman conquest of Italy was a long and bloody process, but by the 3rd century BC, Rome had become the dominant power on the Italian peninsula. With the conquest of Italy complete, Rome turned its attention to the Mediterranean world. The Punic Wars against Carthage were a major turning point in the history of Rome, and marked the beginning of its expansion into a world power. By the 1st century BC, the Roman Empire controlled most of the Mediterranean world, and its influence extended as far north as Britain and as far east as the Euphrates River. The Roman Empire was known for its engineering prowess, its system of law, and its military might, which allowed it to maintain control over such a vast territory. However, despite its many achievements, the Roman Empire was not immune to decline. Economic instability, political corruption, and military challenges from barbarian tribes all contributed to its eventual collapse. The decline of the Roman Empire was a long and complex process that took place over several centuries. The Western Roman Empire, which was weaker and more vulnerable, was the first to fall. The fall of Rome in 410 AD marked the beginning of the end for the Western Roman Empire, and a series of barbarian invasions eventually sealed its fate. The Eastern Roman Empire, which became known as the Byzantine Empire, survived for another 1,000 years, but the fall of the Western Roman Empire marked the end of the Roman Empire as a unified entity. Despite its eventual decline, the Roman Empire had a profound impact on the world. Its legacy can still be seen in modern law, language, architecture, and culture, and its influence can be felt in the political and social structures of many modern nations. Overall, the Roman Empire was a remarkable civilization that achieved great heights of power and influence, and left an enduring legacy that has shaped the course of history. Today, we continue to study and learn from the achievements and challenges of this remarkable empire, and its story remains an important part of our collective human history. The crisis of the 3rd century, how the Roman Empire weathered the storm. The period of the crisis of the 3rd century is one of the most tumultuous periods in the history of the Roman Empire. It was a time of great upheaval, marked by invasions, plagues, and economic turmoil. The crisis began in the mid-3rd century AD, when the Roman Empire was facing a series of military and economic challenges. The Roman Empire was facing invasion from the Goths, the Franks, and the Persians, while at the same time suffering from a series of devastating plagues and economic downturns. The period of the crisis of the 3rd century was characterized by weak and unstable leadership, with a series of short-lived and often ineffective emperors. The empire was beset by power struggles, rebellions, and civil wars, as different factions vied for control. Despite the many challenges it faced, the Roman Empire managed to survive the crisis of the 3rd century. One of the key factors that contributed to its survival was the resilience of its people. The people of the Roman Empire were able to adapt to the changing circumstances, and in many cases, they were able to find ways to thrive in the midst of the crisis. Another key factor that contributed to the survival of the Roman Empire was the strength of its military. The Roman army, while facing many challenges, was still a formidable force, and it was able to repel many of the invasions that threatened the empire. Ultimately, the crisis of the 3rd century came to an end in the late 3rd century AD, when the Emperor Diocletian took power. Diocletian instituted a series of reforms that helped to stabilize the empire and set it on a path to recovery. The crisis of the 3rd century was a difficult and tumultuous time for the Roman Empire, but it was also a period of great resilience and adaptability. Despite the many challenges it faced, the Roman Empire was able to weather the storm and emerge from the crisis stronger and more resilient than ever before. Today, we can still learn from the challenges and triumphs of the crisis of the 3rd century, and its story remains an important part of the history of the Roman Empire. Diocletian and the Tetrarchy, how the Roman Empire reformed and reorganized. Diocletian was one of the most important emperors of the Roman Empire, and his reign marked a period of significant reform and reorganization. He is best known for his establishment of the Tetrarchy, a system of government that divided the empire into 4 separate administrative regions. Diocletian came to power in 284 AD, during a period of great crisis for the Roman Empire. The empire was facing invasions from barbarian tribes, economic instability, and political turmoil. In order to address these challenges, Diocletian instituted a series of sweeping reforms. One of Diocletian's most significant reforms was the establishment of the Tetrarchy. The Tetrarchy divided the empire into 4 separate regions, each of which was governed by a separate emperor. This system helped to reduce the power of individual emperors and promote greater stability and cooperation across the empire. Another important reform instituted by Diocletian was the creation of a new administrative structure. He divided the empire into a series of smaller provinces, each of which was governed by a civil governor and a military commander. This system helped to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the Roman bureaucracy. Diocletian also introduced a series of economic and social reforms. He established a new system of taxation, which was based on land ownership, and he instituted price controls to combat inflation. He also introduced a system of compulsory military service, which helped to strengthen the Roman army. Despite his many accomplishments, Diocletian was also a controversial figure. He was known for his harsh persecution of Christians, which led to the deaths of thousands of people. He was also criticized for his tendency to rule with an iron fist, and his legacy is often debated by historians. Overall, Diocletian and the Tetrarchy marked a period of significant reform and reorganization for the Roman Empire. His accomplishments helped to stabilize the empire and promote greater cooperation and efficiency across its administrative regions. Today, his story continues to be studied and debated by historians, and his impact on the Roman Empire can still be felt in the modern world. Constantine and the Rise of Christianity: How the Roman Empire Embraced a New Religion. Constantine was one of the most important emperors of the Roman Empire, and his reign marked a period of significant change and transformation. He is perhaps best known for his role in the rise of Christianity, and his conversion to this new religion had a profound impact on the history of the Roman Empire. Constantine came to power in 312 AD, during a period of great political and religious upheaval. The Roman Empire was facing a series of challenges, both from within and from outside its borders, and many people were turning to new religious beliefs in search of comfort and hope. Despite being raised in a family of pagans, Constantine was drawn to the teachings of Christianity. In 312 AD, he had a vision of a cross in the sky, accompanied by the words, "In this sign you shall conquer." Inspired by this vision, Constantine embraced Christianity and began to promote its teachings throughout the Roman Empire. One of Constantine's most significant accomplishments was the Edict of Milan, which he issued in 313 AD. The Edict of Milan granted religious freedom to Christians and allowed them to worship openly without fear of persecution. This was a major turning point in the history of Christianity, and it marked the beginning of the religion's rise to prominence in the Roman Empire. Constantine's support for Christianity also had a profound impact on the political and social structures of the Roman Empire. He was responsible for the construction of many Christian churches, and he helped to promote the spread of Christian teachings and beliefs throughout the empire. He also convened the Council of Nicaea, which established the basic beliefs and doctrines of the Christian faith. Despite his support for Christianity, Constantine was not without controversy. He was known for his authoritarian style of government, and he was criticized for his treatment of political rivals and enemies. Nevertheless, his impact on the history of the Roman Empire and the rise of Christianity is undeniable. Overall, Constantine and the rise of Christianity marked a period of significant change and transformation for the Roman Empire. His support for this new religion helped to promote greater religious tolerance and diversity, and it set the stage for the spread of Christianity throughout Europe and the world. Today, we continue to study and learn from this pivotal moment in history, and its impact can still be felt in the modern world. The Goths, how a barbarian tribe became allies of the Roman Empire. The Goths were one of the most significant and influential barbarian tribes of the ancient world. They were known for their warrior culture and their fierce independence, and they played a major role in the history of the Roman Empire. The Goths were originally a nomadic tribe that lived in what is now Sweden, but they began to migrate southward in the 2nd century AD. They eventually settled in what is now Romania, and they came into contact with the Roman Empire. The Goths first became known to the Roman Empire as invaders. They were known for their raids on Roman territory, and they were a constant threat to the security and stability of the empire. Despite their reputation as invaders, the Goths were also known for their skills as warriors. They were renowned for their cavalry and their archers, and they were respected by many in the Roman army. Over time, the relationship between the Goths and the Roman Empire began to shift. In the 4th century AD, the Roman Empire began to recruit Goths into its army, and the Goths began to fight on behalf of the empire. The Goths also played a major role in the politics of the Roman Empire. The Emperor Theodosius I, who was himself of Gothic descent, made a number of political and military alliances with the Goths, and he helped to promote greater cooperation between the Goths and the Roman Empire. Despite these alliances, the relationship between the Goths and the Roman Empire was not always smooth. There were periods of conflict and mistrust, and the Goths were not always treated fairly by the Romans. Nevertheless, the Goths were able to establish themselves as significant allies of the Roman Empire, and their impact on the history of the empire is still felt today. The Goths helped to promote greater diversity and multiculturalism in the Roman Empire, and they helped to strengthen the Roman army through their skills as warriors. Overall, the story of the Goths is a complex and fascinating one, and it highlights the diversity and complexity of the ancient world. Today, we continue to study and learn from the history of the Goths, and their story remains an important part of the history of the Roman Empire. The rise of the Huns, how Attila and his army became the scourge of God. The Huns were one of the most fearsome and powerful barbarian tribes of the ancient world. They were known for their nomadic lifestyle, their ferocity in battle, and their ability to strike fear into the hearts of their enemies. The Huns first came into contact with the Roman Empire in the 4th century AD. At that time, they were a relatively minor tribe, and they were often used as mercenaries by the Roman army. Over time, however, the Huns began to grow in power and influence. They were led by a charismatic leader named Attila, who became known as the Scourge of God for his brutal tactics and his ability to defeat much larger armies. Attila's rise to power was marked by a series of devastating military campaigns. He invaded the Roman Empire multiple times, sacking cities and laying waste to entire regions. He also fought against other barbarian tribes, including the Visigoths and the Ostrogoths. Despite his reputation as a brutal and ruthless leader, Attila was also known for his strategic skill and his ability to inspire his troops. He was able to maintain the loyalty of his followers through a combination of fear, charisma, and a shared sense of purpose. Ultimately, the Huns were unable to sustain their power, and their influence began to decline in the 5th century AD. Attila died in 453 AD, and his empire began to disintegrate shortly thereafter. Despite their relatively short period of dominance, the Huns had a profound impact on the history of the ancient world. They helped to shape the political and military landscape of Europe, and their influence can still be seen in the culture and traditions of many modern nations. Today, the story of the Huns and their leader Attila continues to fascinate and intrigue people around the world. Their legacy is a testament to the power of charisma, strategy, and leadership, and it remains an important part of the history of the ancient world. The fall of the Western Roman Empire, how Odoacer and his army brought an end to an era. The fall of the Western Roman Empire was one of the most significant events in the history of the ancient world. It marked the end of a period of Roman dominance in Europe, and the beginning of a new era of political, economic, and social change. The fall of the Western Roman Empire was a complex and multifaceted event, but it was ultimately brought about by a series of military and political challenges that the Roman Empire was unable to overcome. One of the most significant challenges to the Western Roman Empire came from the Germanic tribes that had been migrating into the empire for centuries. These tribes were often used as mercenaries by the Roman army, but they were also a constant threat to the security and stability of the empire. In 476 AD, the Western Roman Empire was dealt a fatal blow by a Germanic leader named Odoacer. Odoacer was a general in the Roman army who had been appointed as governor of Italy, but he soon turned against the Roman Empire and led a rebellion against the emperor. Odoacer was able to defeat the Roman army and establish himself as the ruler of Italy. He then sent a letter to the emperor in Constantinople, declaring that the Western Roman Empire no longer existed. The fall of the Western Roman Empire had a profound impact on the history of Europe. It marked the end of the Roman Empire and the beginning of a new era of political and cultural change. The legacy of the Roman Empire can still be seen today in the many languages, cultures, and traditions that are descended from the Roman Empire. Today, the story of the fall of the Western Roman Empire continues to fascinate and intrigue people around the world. It is a reminder of the fragility of even the most powerful empires, and it serves as a cautionary tale about the importance of political stability, economic prosperity, and social harmony. The Visigoths and the Kingdom of Toulouse, how a barbarian tribe established a new power in Europe. The Visigoths were one of the most important and influential barbarian tribes of the ancient world. They were known for their military prowess, their political savvy, and their ability to adapt to new cultures and traditions. The Visigoths first came into contact with the Roman Empire in the 4th century AD, when they were living in what is now Romania. They were initially used as mercenaries by the Roman army, but over time they began to establish their own power and influence. The Visigoths eventually settled in what is now Spain, and they established a powerful kingdom in the city of Toulouse. This kingdom was known for its political stability, its strong economy, and its emphasis on cultural and religious diversity. One of the most significant accomplishments of the Visigoths was their conversion to Christianity. They embraced the teachings of the Catholic Church and helped to spread the religion throughout the Iberian Peninsula. The Visigoths were also known for their architectural and artistic achievements. They built many impressive buildings, including churches, monasteries, and palaces, and they were renowned for their intricate metalwork and jewelry. Despite their many accomplishments, the Visigoths were not without their challenges. They were often at odds with other barbarian tribes, including the Franks and the Vandals, and they faced a number of political and economic crises. Nevertheless, the Visigoths were able to establish themselves as a significant power in Europe, and their legacy can still be seen today in the many languages, cultures, and traditions that are descended from the Visigoths. Today, the story of the Visigoths and the Kingdom of Toulouse is a reminder of the importance of adaptability, cultural diversity, and political stability. It is a testament to the resilience and creativity of the human spirit, and it continues to inspire and fascinate people around the world. The Ostrogoths and the Kingdom of Italy, how a barbarian tribe established a new kingdom in Europe. The Ostrogoths were one of the most significant and influential barbarian tribes of the ancient world. They were known for their military prowess, their political acumen, and their ability to adapt to new cultures and traditions. The Ostrogoths first came into contact with the Roman Empire in the 3rd century AD, when they were living in what is now Ukraine. They were initially used as mercenaries by the Roman army, but over time they began to establish their own power and influence. The Ostrogoths eventually settled in what is now Italy, and they established a powerful kingdom under the leadership of their king, Theodoric. Theodoric was known for his political savvy, his military skill, and his emphasis on cultural and religious diversity. One of the most significant accomplishments of the Ostrogoths was their role in preserving the knowledge and traditions of the Roman Empire. They were able to maintain many of the administrative and cultural institutions of the Roman Empire, and they helped to keep the legacy of Rome alive for centuries. The Ostrogoths were also known for their artistic and architectural achievements. They built many impressive buildings, including churches, palaces, and fortresses, and they were renowned for their intricate metalwork and jewelry. Despite their many accomplishments, the Ostrogoths were not without their challenges. They faced a number of political and economic crises, and they were often at odds with other barbarian tribes, including the Lombards and the Franks. Nevertheless, the Ostrogoths were able to establish themselves as a significant power in Europe, and their legacy can still be seen today in the many languages, cultures, and traditions that are descended from the Ostrogoths. Today, the story of the Ostrogoths and the Kingdom of Italy is a reminder of the importance of adaptability, cultural diversity, and political stability. It is a testament to the resilience and creativity of the human spirit, and it continues to inspire and fascinate people around the world. The Franks. How a barbarian tribe built an empire from Clovis to Charlemagne. The Franks were one of the most important and influential barbarian tribes of the ancient world. They were known for their military might, their political savvy, and their ability to adapt to new cultures and traditions. The Franks first came into contact with the Roman Empire in the 3rd century AD, when they were living in what is now Germany. They were initially used as mercenaries by the Roman army, but over time they began to establish their own power and influence. One of the most significant figures in the history of the Franks was their king, Clovis. Clovis was known for his military skill, his political acumen, and his ability to unite the disparate Frankish tribes under a single banner. Under Clovis's leadership, the Franks were able to establish a powerful kingdom in what is now France. The Franks continued to grow in power and influence over the centuries, and they eventually became one of the most dominant forces in Europe. This was due in large part to the leadership of Charlemagne, who was crowned the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire in 800 AD. Charlemagne was known for his military conquests, his religious reforms, and his emphasis on education and culture. He helped to establish a new era of political, economic, and social growth, and his influence can still be seen in the many languages, cultures, and traditions that are descended from the Frankish Empire. Despite their many accomplishments, the Franks were not without their challenges. They faced a number of political and economic crises, and they were often at odds with other barbarian tribes, including the Saxons and the Lombards. Nevertheless, the Franks were able to establish themselves as a significant power in Europe, and their legacy can still be seen today in the many languages, cultures, and traditions that are descended from the Frankish Empire. Today, the story of the Franks from Clovis to Charlemagne is a reminder of the importance of political stability, military might, and cultural diversity. It is a testament to the resilience and creativity of the human spirit, and it continues to inspire and fascinate people around the world. Chapter 2. The Carolingian Empire, Charlemagne and his successors. The rise of the Carolingians, how Pippin the Short helped overthrow the Merovingian dynasty. The Carolingian dynasty was one of the most significant and influential ruling families of the medieval world. They were known for their political skill, their military might, and their ability to establish a new era of political, economic, and cultural growth. The Carolingian dynasty first came into power in the 8th century AD, when Pippin the Short overthrew the Merovingian dynasty. The Merovingians were the ruling family of the Franks at the time, but they were known for their political weakness and their inability to maintain a stable and prosperous kingdom. Pippin the Short was able to take advantage of this weakness and establish a new dynasty that would go on to rule over much of Europe for centuries. Pippin was known for his military conquests, his political reforms, and his emphasis on cultural and religious diversity. Under the Carolingians, the Frankish Empire experienced a period of unprecedented growth and expansion. They were able to establish new trade routes, build impressive public works, and establish a new era of political and cultural unity. One of the most significant accomplishments of the Carolingians was their role in preserving the knowledge and traditions of the ancient world. They established new centers of learning, such as the Palace School of Charlemagne, which helped to keep the legacy of the Roman Empire alive for centuries. Despite their many accomplishments, the Carolingians were not without their challenges. They faced a number of political and economic crises, and they were often at odds with other ruling families, including the Lombards and the Saxons. Nevertheless, the Carolingians were able to establish themselves as one of the most powerful and influential ruling families in the history of Europe. Their legacy can still be seen today in the many languages, cultures, and traditions that are descended from the Carolingian Empire. Today, the story of the rise of the Carolingians is a reminder of the importance of political stability, military might, and cultural diversity. It is a testament to the resilience and creativity of the human spirit, and it continues to inspire and fascinate people around the world. Charlemagne, the early years of a great ruler. Charlemagne was one of the most significant and influential rulers of the medieval world. He was known for his military conquests, his religious reforms, and his emphasis on education and culture. Charlemagne was born in 742 AD in what is now Belgium, and his early years set the stage for his future accomplishments. Charlemagne's father was Pepin the Short, who was the king of the Franks at the time. Pepin was known for his political skill and his military might, and he laid the groundwork for the Carolingian dynasty to come. Charlemagne's mother was Bertrada of Laon, who was known for her intelligence and her political savvy. From an early age, Charlemagne was trained in the art of war and the skills of rulership. He was educated by the finest tutors of the time, and he was known for his exceptional intelligence and his ability to speak several languages. When Charlemagne was still a young man, his father died and he was forced to assume the throne. Despite his youth, Charlemagne was able to maintain the stability and prosperity of the Frankish Empire, and he embarked on a series of military conquests that would establish him as one of the most powerful rulers in the world. One of Charlemagne's most significant accomplishments during his early years was his campaign to conquer the Lombard kingdom in what is now Italy. He was able to establish a new kingdom in the region and establish a new era of political and cultural growth. Charlemagne's early years also set the stage for his future reforms in education, religion, and culture. He established new schools and libraries, promoted the study of the classics, and was a strong supporter of the Christian Church. Despite his many accomplishments, Charlemagne was not without his challenges. He faced a number of political and economic crises, and he was often at odds with other ruling families, including the Saxons and the Avars. Nevertheless, Charlemagne's early years established him as a ruler of exceptional skill and intelligence, and they set the stage for his future accomplishments. His legacy can still be seen today in the many languages, cultures, and traditions that are descended from the Carolingian Empire. Today, the story of Charlemagne's early years is a reminder of the importance of education, culture, and political stability. It is a testament to the resilience and creativity of the human spirit, and it continues to inspire and fascinate people around the world. Charlemagne, the conquest of Lombardy and Saxony and the expansion of the Carolingian Empire. Charlemagne was one of the most significant and influential rulers of the medieval world. He was known for his military conquests, his religious reforms, and his emphasis on education and culture. One of his most significant accomplishments was the conquest of Lombardy and Saxony, which helped to expand the Carolingian Empire and establish a new era of political and cultural growth. Charlemagne's campaign to conquer Lombardy began in 773 AD, when he launched a surprise attack on the Lombard kingdom in what is now Italy. Despite being vastly outnumbered, Charlemagne was able to secure a series of stunning victories that would help to establish a new kingdom in the region. Charlemagne's conquest of Lombardy was significant for several reasons. It helped to establish the Carolingian Empire as a dominant force in Europe, and it gave Charlemagne a significant amount of wealth and resources to fund his future conquests. It also helped to establish a new era of political and cultural growth in the region, as Charlemagne brought with him new ideas and traditions from the Frankish Empire. After the conquest of Lombardy, Charlemagne turned his attention to Saxony, which was located in what is now Germany. The Saxons were known for their fierce independence and their resistance to outside rule, but Charlemagne was determined to bring them under his control. The campaign to conquer Saxony was long and difficult, but Charlemagne was ultimately successful in establishing Frankish rule over the region. He used a combination of military might, diplomacy, and religious conversion to bring the Saxons under his control, and he established a new era of political and cultural unity in the region. Charlemagne's conquest of Lombardy and Saxony helped to establish him as one of the most powerful and influential rulers of the medieval world. It expanded the Carolingian Empire and established a new era of political and cultural growth. It also helped to establish the Frankish Empire as a dominant force in Europe, and it paved the way for future military campaigns and conquests. Today, the story of Charlemagne's conquest of Lombardy and Saxony is a reminder of the importance of military might, political savvy, and cultural diversity. It is a testament to the resilience and creativity of the human spirit, and it continues to inspire and fascinate people around the world. The Carolingian Renaissance: how Charlemagne revolutionized culture, education, and religion. The Carolingian Renaissance was a period of cultural, educational, and religious growth that occurred in the Carolingian Empire under the reign of Charlemagne. It was a time of great intellectual and artistic growth, and it established the Carolingian Empire as a dominant force in Europe. One of the most significant accomplishments of the Carolingian Renaissance was its emphasis on education. Charlemagne established new schools and libraries throughout the empire, and he placed a strong emphasis on the study of the classics, including Latin and Greek. This helped to establish a new era of intellectual growth and cultural exchange in the region. The Carolingian Renaissance also had a significant impact on religion. Charlemagne was a devout Christian, and he used his influence to promote the study of the Bible and the establishment of new religious institutions throughout the empire. This helped to establish a new era of religious growth and cultural diversity in the region. The Carolingian Renaissance also had a significant impact on art and architecture. Charlemagne promoted the creation of new works of art and the construction of new public works, including churches, palaces, and other public buildings. This helped to establish a new era of artistic and architectural growth in the region, and it established the Carolingian Empire as a center of cultural innovation and creativity. One of the most significant accomplishments of the Carolingian Renaissance was its impact on the development of the written word. Charlemagne was a strong supporter of literacy and the written word, and he established new centers of learning and scholarship that helped to preserve the legacy of the ancient world. This helped to establish a new era of intellectual growth and cultural exchange in the region, and it established the Carolingian Empire as a center of literary innovation and creativity. Despite its many accomplishments, the Carolingian Renaissance was not without its challenges. It faced a number of political and economic crises, and it was often at odds with other ruling families, including the Lombards and the Saxons. Nevertheless, the Carolingian Renaissance established the Carolingian Empire as a dominant force in Europe, and paved the way for future cultural and artistic growth. Its legacy can still be seen today in the many languages, cultures, and traditions that are descended from the Carolingian Empire. Louis the Pious and the Divisio Imperii: how a ruler's legacy was tarnished by political instability. Louis the Pious was the son of Charlemagne, and he was one of the most significant rulers of the Carolingian Empire. He was known for his political skill, his religious piety, and his dedication to education and culture. However, his legacy was tarnished by the political instability that followed his reign, particularly his failed attempt to divide the empire among his sons, known as the Divisio Imperii. The Divisio Imperii was a plan that Louis the Pious had created in an attempt to divide the Carolingian Empire among his three sons. The plan was designed to prevent the type of succession crisis that had plagued the empire in the past, but it ultimately proved to be a failure. Louis's sons soon turned against each other, and a long period of instability and conflict followed. The division of the empire was complicated by a number of factors, including the fact that Louis had 4 sons, but only 3 kingdoms to divide. This led to a number of disputes and rivalries, and it ultimately led to the fragmentation of the Carolingian Empire. Despite the political instability that followed Louis's reign, his legacy remains significant. He was known for his dedication to education and culture, and he continued the Carolingian Renaissance that his father had established. He also promoted religious piety and the study of the Bible, and he established new religious institutions throughout the empire. Louis's reign was also significant for its impact on the development of feudalism. Feudalism was a system of social organization that was based on the exchange of land for military service, and it would come to define the political and economic organization of the medieval world. Louis's reign saw the development of the first feudal relationships, which would go on to shape the political and economic landscape of Europe for centuries to come. Despite the political instability that followed Louis's reign, his legacy remains significant. He was a ruler of exceptional skill and intelligence, and his dedication to education, culture, and religion helped to establish the Carolingian Empire as a center of intellectual and artistic growth. Today, the story of Louis the Pious and the Divisio Imperii is a reminder of the challenges of political instability and the importance of strong leadership. It is a testament to the resilience and creativity of the human spirit, and it continues to inspire and fascinate people around the world. The Vikings, raiders and conquerors who shaped Europe's history. The Vikings were a seafaring people from Scandinavia who emerged as one of the most formidable forces in medieval Europe. They were known for their ferocity, their skill in battle, and their ability to navigate the treacherous waters of the North Atlantic. They were also known for their cultural and artistic achievements, which helped to shape the cultural landscape of Europe. The Vikings first emerged as raiders in the late 8th century, when they began launching attacks on the coasts of Europe. They targeted a wide range of settlements, from small villages to large cities, and they were known for their ruthless tactics, including the use of surprise attacks and the taking of hostages. The Viking raids had a significant impact on the political and economic landscape of Europe. They helped to weaken the power of the Carolingian Empire and the Byzantine Empire, and they helped to establish a new era of political and economic instability in the region. They also helped to establish the Vikings as one of the most feared and respected forces in Europe. However, the Vikings were not just raiders. They were also skilled traders and navigators, and they established a network of trade routes that spanned the North Atlantic. They traded in a wide range of goods, including furs, amber, and slaves, and they established trading posts and settlements throughout the region. The Vikings also had a significant impact on the cultural and artistic landscape of Europe. They were known for their distinctive style of art, which was characterized by intricate knotwork, animal forms, and bold colors. They also had a rich tradition of storytelling, and they produced some of the most important works of literature in the medieval world. Despite their reputation as raiders and conquerors, the Vikings had a complex and nuanced culture that helped to shape the history of Europe. They were a people of great courage and creativity, and they established a legacy that is still felt today in the many cultures and traditions that are descended from their legacy. Today, the story of the Vikings is a reminder of the importance of cultural exchange and the role of the sea in shaping the history of the world. It is a testament to the resilience and creativity of the human spirit, and it continues to inspire and fascinate people around the world. The Treaty of Verdun and the Division of the Empire. How political division redefined the course of European history. The Treaty of Verdun was a pivotal moment in European history. It marked the end of the Carolingian Empire, which had been established by Charlemagne, and the beginning of a new era of political and economic instability. The treaty divided the empire among 3 of Charlemagne's grandsons, and it established the foundation for the modern European state system. The division of the empire was the result of a long period of political instability and conflict. Charlemagne had created a vast empire that spanned much of Europe, but he had struggled to establish a stable succession plan. This had led to a number of succession crises and periods of political instability. The Treaty of Verdun was designed to prevent another succession crisis by dividing the empire among Charlemagne's grandsons. The treaty divided the empire into three parts: West Francia, Middle Francia, and East Francia. West Francia became the foundation of modern France. Middle Francia was a buffer zone between the two, and East Francia would eventually become Germany. The treaty had a significant impact on the political and economic landscape of Europe. It helped to establish the foundation for the modern state system, and it helped to create a sense of national identity and cultural distinction among the various regions of Europe. It also helped to establish the groundwork for the development of feudalism, which would go on to shape the political and economic landscape of Europe for centuries to come. Despite its significance, the Treaty of Verdun was not without its challenges. The division of the empire was complicated by a number of factors, including the fact that the empire was not divided evenly among the three grandsons. This led to a number of disputes and rivalries, and it ultimately led to the fragmentation of the Carolingian Empire. However, the Treaty of Verdun remains a significant moment in European history. It marked the end of one era and the beginning of another, and it helped to establish the groundwork for the modern state system. Its legacy can still be seen today in the many languages, cultures, and traditions that are descended from the Carolingian Empire. Today, the story of the Treaty of Verdun is a reminder of the importance of political stability and the role of strong leadership in shaping the course of history. It is a testament to the resilience and creativity of the human spirit, and it continues to inspire and fascinate people around the world. The reign of Charles the Bald: how civil war and political instability led to the rise of feudalism. Charles the Bald was a significant figure in the history of medieval Europe. He was the grandson of Charlemagne and a member of the Carolingian dynasty, which had established a vast empire that spanned much of Europe. However, his reign was marked by civil war and political instability, which helped to pave the way for the rise of feudalism. Charles's reign was marked by a number of challenges, including the fact that he was competing for power with his brothers and other members of the Carolingian dynasty. This led to a long period of political instability and conflict, and it ultimately led to the fragmentation of the empire. One of the most significant developments during Charles's reign was the rise of feudalism. Feudalism was a system of social organization that was based on the exchange of land for military service. It emerged as a response to the political instability and the breakdown of central authority that had characterized Charles's reign. Feudalism helped to establish a new social and economic order in Europe. It created a system of vassalage and feudal obligations that defined the relationship between lords and vassals, and it helped to establish the groundwork for the development of modern states and national identities. Despite the challenges of his reign, Charles was known for his support of the arts and culture. He continued the Carolingian Renaissance that had been established by his grandfather, and he promoted the study of classical literature and the arts. The legacy of Charles the Bald is a complex one. He was a ruler who faced many challenges, but he also helped to establish the groundwork for the development of modern Europe. His reign was a time of political instability and conflict, but it was also a time of creativity and innovation. The rise of feudalism during his reign was a significant moment in European history, and it continues to shape the political and economic landscape of the modern world. Today, the story of Charles the Bald is a reminder of the importance of political stability and the role of strong leadership in shaping the course of history. It is a testament to the resilience and creativity of the human spirit, and it continues to inspire and fascinate people around the world. The collapse of the Carolingian Empire: how invasion and fragmentation led to the end of an era. The Carolingian Empire was one of the most significant political entities in the history of medieval Europe. Established by Charlemagne in the 8th century, it had been a powerful force for over 200 years. However, in the late 9th and early 10th centuries, the empire began to collapse due to invasion and fragmentation. The collapse of the Carolingian Empire was the result of a number of factors, including political instability, economic challenges, and external threats. One of the most significant external threats came from the Vikings, who launched a series of devastating attacks on the empire's coastal regions. These attacks had a significant impact on the political and economic landscape of the empire. They weakened the power of the central government, and they helped to establish a new era of political and economic instability. The attacks also contributed to the fragmentation of the empire, as local lords and rulers began to establish their own independent territories. The fragmentation of the Carolingian Empire was a significant moment in European history. It marked the end of one era and the beginning of another, and it helped to establish the groundwork for the development of modern Europe. The period of fragmentation also contributed to the rise of feudalism, which became the dominant political and economic system in Europe for centuries to come. Despite its collapse, the Carolingian Empire had a significant impact on the political and cultural landscape of Europe. It had established a powerful centralized government and had helped to spread literacy and learning throughout the region. Its legacy can still be seen today in the many languages, cultures, and traditions that are descended from the Carolingian Empire. Today, the story of the collapse of the Carolingian Empire is a reminder of the importance of political stability and the role of strong leadership in shaping the course of history. It is a testament to the resilience and creativity of the human spirit, and it continues to inspire and fascinate people around the world. The legacy of the Carolingians, how feudalism, the church, and European identity shaped the modern world. The Carolingian Empire may have collapsed, but its legacy lived on. The empire had a profound impact on the political, economic, and cultural landscape of Europe, and it helped to shape the course of world history. Its legacy can still be seen today in the many languages, cultures, and traditions that are descended from the Carolingian Empire. One of the most significant legacies of the Carolingians was the development of feudalism. Feudalism was a system of social and economic organization that was based on the exchange of land for military service. It emerged as a response to the political instability and the breakdown of central authority that had characterized the Carolingian period. Feudalism helped to establish a new social and economic order in Europe, and it helped to establish the groundwork for the development of modern states and national identities. Another significant legacy of the Carolingians was the role of the Church in European society. Charlemagne had been a devout Christian, and he had helped to establish the Catholic Church as a powerful force in European politics and culture. The Church played a significant role in the development of European identity, and it helped to spread literacy and learning throughout the region. The Carolingian Renaissance had a significant impact on European culture and education. It helped to revive the study of classical literature and the arts, and it helped to establish a new era of learning and creativity. The Carolingian Empire also helped to establish the foundation for the development of modern universities and centers of learning. Despite its collapse, the Carolingian Empire had a lasting impact on the political, economic, and cultural landscape of Europe. Its legacy can still be seen today in the many languages, cultures, and traditions that are descended from the Carolingian Empire. Its influence can be seen in the modern political and economic systems of Europe, as well as in the development of modern education and culture. Today, the story of the Carolingian Empire is a reminder of the importance of political stability, the role of religion in shaping society, and the resilience of the human spirit. It is a testament to the power of culture, learning, and creativity, and it continues to inspire and fascinate people around the world. Chapter 3. The Viking Age, Raiders, Traders, and Conquerors. The origins of the Vikings, how society, religion, and culture shaped a seafaring people. The Vikings were a seafaring people who emerged from the Scandinavian region in the 8th century. They were known for their raiding and trading activities, and they played a significant role in the political and economic landscape of Europe for several centuries. The origins of the Vikings can be traced back to a number of social, religious, and cultural factors. One of the most significant factors in the emergence of the Vikings was their society. Scandinavian society was based on a system of social organization known as the Thing. This was a system of government that was based on the participation of free men in public assemblies. This system helped to establish a sense of equality and fairness in Scandinavian society, and it helped to create a strong sense of community among the people. Another significant factor in the emergence of the Vikings was their religion. The Vikings were known for their worship of the Norse gods, which included Odin, Thor, and Freya. The Norse religion emphasized bravery, honor, and courage, and it helped to create a warrior culture that was highly valued in Viking society. The Vikings were also known for their culture, which included art, literature, and music. Viking art was known for its intricate designs and intricate craftsmanship, while Viking literature included sagas and poems that told stories of heroic deeds and legendary figures. Viking music was also an important part of their culture, and it was often used to accompany their storytelling and other cultural activities. The Vikings were a seafaring people, and their ships were a significant factor in their success. Viking ships were fast and maneuverable, and they allowed the Vikings to travel long distances and to navigate difficult waters. The Vikings used their ships for raiding, trading, and exploration, and their success as seafarers helped to establish their reputation as a formidable force in the political and economic landscape of Europe. Despite their reputation as raiders, the Vikings also played a significant role in the cultural and economic development of Europe. They established trade routes, built settlements, and established diplomatic relationships with other cultures. They also contributed to the development of European languages, including the English language, which contains many words of Viking origin. Today, the story of the Vikings is a reminder of the power of society, religion, and culture in shaping the course of history. It is a testament to the creativity and resilience of the human spirit, and it continues to inspire and fascinate people around the world. The Age of the Longships: How Viking Expansion and Exploration Shaped the World. The Viking Age, also known as the Age of the Longships, was a period of significant expansion and exploration for the Vikings. During this time, the Vikings established settlements in new lands, expanded their trading networks, and explored new territories. The Age of the Longships had a significant impact on the political, economic, and cultural landscape of Europe, and it helped to shape the course of world history. One of the most significant factors in the expansion of the Vikings was their ships. The Viking longships were fast and maneuverable, and they allowed the Vikings to travel long distances and to navigate difficult waters. The longships were also designed to be easily beached, which allowed the Vikings to land on shore and quickly establish settlements or launch attacks. The Vikings were known for their raiding activities, but they also established settlements in new lands. The Vikings established settlements in areas such as Iceland, Greenland, and Newfoundland, and they created a new society and culture in these regions. They adapted to the harsh environments of these regions and developed new technologies and techniques for agriculture, fishing, and survival. The Vikings also expanded their trading networks during the Age of the Longships. They established trading routes throughout Europe and beyond, and they traded in goods such as furs, amber, and silver. The Vikings' trading activities helped to establish economic connections between different regions and cultures, and it helped to spread knowledge and technology throughout Europe. The Age of the Longships was also a period of significant exploration for the Vikings. They explored new territories such as North America, and they established contact with new cultures such as the Byzantine Empire. The Vikings' explorations helped to expand the boundaries of the known world, and it helped to establish new trade and diplomatic relationships between different cultures. Despite their reputation as raiders, the Vikings played a significant role in the cultural and economic development of Europe. They established new settlements, expanded trading networks, and explored new territories. Their ships, skills, and ingenuity helped to establish the foundation for the development of modern naval technology and exploration. The Age of the Longships had a lasting impact on the political, economic, and cultural landscape of Europe, and it helped to shape the course of world history. Today, the story of the Age of the Longships is a reminder of the power of exploration, innovation, and adaptation. It is a testament to the creativity and resilience of the human spirit, and it continues to inspire and fascinate people around the world. The Lindisfarne Raid: How the Viking attack on a monastery marked the beginning of the Viking Age. The Viking Age is known for its raids, conquests, and expansion. The beginning of the Viking Age is often traced to the Lindisfarne Raid, an attack on the Lindisfarne Monastery in 793 AD. This raid marked the beginning of a period of significant expansion and exploration for the Vikings, and it had a lasting impact on the political, cultural, and economic landscape of Europe. The Lindisfarne Monastery was located on the island of Lindisfarne, off the coast of Northumberland in England. The monastery was known for its wealth and its collection of religious artifacts, which made it a target for raiders. On June 8, 793 AD, a group of Viking raiders landed on the island and attacked the monastery. The raiders looted the monastery and killed many of the monks. The attack was a shock to the Christian world, and it was seen as a sign of the end times. The raid also marked the beginning of a new era in European history, as the Vikings began to expand their activities beyond their homelands. The raid on Lindisfarne was not an isolated incident. In the years that followed, the Vikings continued to raid and conquer new territories. They established settlements in areas such as Iceland, Greenland, and Newfoundland, and they expanded their trading networks throughout Europe and beyond. The Viking Age was a period of significant expansion and exploration for the Vikings. They established a new society and culture in the lands they conquered, and they helped to spread knowledge and technology throughout Europe. They also contributed to the development of European languages, including the English language, which contains many words of Viking origin. Despite their reputation as raiders, the Vikings played a significant role in the cultural and economic development of Europe. They established new settlements, expanded trading networks, and explored new territories. Their actions helped to establish the foundation for the development of modern naval technology and exploration. The Lindisfarne Raid marked the beginning of the Viking Age, and it had a lasting impact on the political, economic, and cultural landscape of Europe. Today, the story of the Lindisfarne Raid is a reminder of the power of human ingenuity and the impact of historical events. It is a testament to the strength of the human spirit, and it continues to inspire and fascinate people around the world. The Viking Conquest of England: How Canute, Sweyn Forkbeard, and the Danelaw Changed English History. The Viking Age is known for the Viking conquest of England, a period in which Viking armies and settlers took control of significant portions of England. This period of history is often referred to as the Danelaw, and it was characterized by the influence of Viking culture and language on the English population. The Viking conquest of England began with the arrival of Viking raiders in the late 8th century. The Vikings targeted England because of its wealth and strategic importance, and they established settlements in areas such as York and East Anglia. In the years that followed, the Vikings continued to raid and conquer new territories, and they established a new society and culture in the lands they conquered. One of the most significant figures in the Viking conquest of England was Sweyn Forkbeard, the King of Denmark. Sweyn led a successful invasion of England in 1013, and he was crowned the King of England. However, Sweyn's reign was short-lived, and he died just a few months after his coronation. Sweyn's son Canute took control of England after his father's death. Canute was a skilled politician and leader, and he established a stable and prosperous kingdom in England. He also established a significant cultural influence on England, with many of the customs and traditions of the Vikings being adopted by the English population. The Viking conquest of England had a lasting impact on the political, cultural, and economic landscape of England. The Danelaw, the area of England under Viking control, became a significant center of trade and commerce, and it helped to spread the influence of Viking culture throughout England. The influence of the Vikings can still be seen in many aspects of English culture, from the language to the cuisine to the architecture. Despite the conflicts between the Vikings and the English, the Viking conquest of England also led to a period of cultural exchange and growth. The Vikings brought with them new technologies, customs, and traditions, and these were adopted by the English population. The Viking conquest of England marked the beginning of a new era in English history, one that was characterized by cultural exchange and growth. Today, the story of the Viking conquest of England is a reminder of the power of cultural exchange and the importance of understanding different cultures. It is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, and it continues to inspire and fascinate people around the world. The Viking conquest of England, led by figures such as Canute and Sweyn Forkbeard, helped to shape the course of English history, and it had a lasting impact on the cultural, economic, and political landscape of England. The Varangians, how Vikings became part of the Eastern world. When we think of Vikings, we often imagine them raiding and conquering lands in the West, such as England and France. However, Vikings also played a significant role in the Eastern world, particularly in the area that is now modern-day Russia. These Vikings, known as the Varangians, established a presence in the region that had a lasting impact on the political, economic, and cultural landscape of the area. The Varangians were a group of Vikings who began to explore the Eastern world in the 9th century. They established settlements in the areas that are now modern-day Ukraine and Russia, and they became known for their trading and raiding activities. Over time, the Varangians began to establish themselves as a significant force in the region, and they played a role in the development of the Rus state. The Varangians brought with them a unique culture and way of life, and they influenced the cultural development of the areas in which they settled. They also brought new technologies and knowledge, such as shipbuilding techniques and military strategies, that helped to shape the development of the Eastern world. One of the most significant figures in the Varangian world was Rurik, a Viking leader who is said to have established the Rus state. Rurik and his successors helped to develop the political and economic landscape of the region, and they established trade routes that helped to link the East and the West. The Varangians also played a significant role in the development of the Eastern Orthodox Church. They helped to spread Christianity throughout the region, and they established monasteries and churches that became centers of culture and learning. The influence of the Varangians can still be seen in the cultural, political, and economic landscape of the Eastern world. The influence of the Vikings can be seen in the architecture, the language, and the traditions of the region. The Varangians helped to shape the development of the Eastern world, and they helped to bridge the gap between the East and the West. Today, the story of the Varangians is a reminder of the power of cultural exchange and the importance of understanding different cultures. It is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, and it continues to inspire and fascinate people around the world. The Varangians, Vikings who became part of the Eastern world, helped to shape the course of history in the region, and they had a lasting impact on the cultural, economic, and political landscape of the area. The Icelandic sagas, how stories shaped Viking Age society. The Icelandic sagas are a collection of stories that were written in the 13th century, but they describe the events of the Viking Age in Scandinavia, roughly from the 9th to 11th centuries. These stories are considered to be some of the greatest works of medieval literature, and they offer insight into the social and cultural values of the Viking Age society. The Icelandic sagas are unique in that they were written in a time when few written records existed. They provide an intimate look into the daily lives, customs, and traditions of Viking Age society, including the role of women, the power of chieftains, and the importance of honor and revenge. The sagas are primarily focused on the lives and adventures of individual characters, and they often describe the conflicts and battles that took place between different factions in Viking Age society. Many of the characters are based on historical figures, and the stories offer insight into the political and social landscape of the time. One of the most significant aspects of the Icelandic sagas is their portrayal of women. Unlike other medieval literature, which often portrays women as passive and submissive, the sagas depict strong and independent women who play a significant role in the stories. This suggests that women in Viking Age society had more agency and influence than previously thought. The sagas also explore the concept of honor and revenge, which was a fundamental aspect of Viking Age society. Characters in the stories are often motivated by a desire to uphold their honor, and they will go to great lengths to seek revenge if they feel that their honor has been insulted. The Icelandic sagas had a significant impact on Viking Age society, shaping the cultural values and beliefs of the people. The stories helped to reinforce the importance of family, community, and tradition, and they provided a framework for understanding the complex social and political relationships of the time. Today, the Icelandic sagas remain an important part of medieval literature, and they continue to offer insight into the society and culture of Viking Age Scandinavia. They serve as a reminder of the power of storytelling and its ability to shape the cultural values and beliefs of a society. The sagas continue to inspire and fascinate people around the world, and they offer a glimpse into a unique and fascinating time in human history. Viking warfare, the art of combat in the Viking Age. The Vikings were known for their fierce and brutal raids, and they were feared throughout Europe for their ruthless tactics and formidable weapons. But the Vikings were also skilled warriors, and their military tactics and battle strategies were among the most advanced of their time. Viking warfare was a complex and sophisticated system that involved a wide range of tactics, weapons, and battle strategies. The Vikings would use their superior knowledge of the terrain and their speed and agility to gain an advantage over their enemies. One of the key weapons of the Viking warrior was the axe. The Vikings used a variety of different types of axes, from small throwing axes to larger two-handed battle axes. They were also skilled archers and would use their longbows to rain down arrows on their enemies from a distance. The Vikings were also skilled in hand-to-hand combat, and they would use a variety of different techniques to defeat their opponents. One of the most famous of these techniques was the shield wall, which involved forming a tight formation of warriors holding large shields. The shield wall was a formidable defense, and it allowed the Vikings to withstand attacks from their enemies. The Vikings were also skilled at siege warfare, and they would use a variety of different tactics to breach the defenses of their enemies. They would use battering rams to break down gates and walls, and they would also use tunnels and other secret entrances to gain access to fortifications. In addition to their weapons and tactics, the Vikings were also skilled in battle strategy. They would use deception, surprise attacks, and other cunning tactics to catch their enemies off guard. They would also use psychological warfare, such as wearing intimidating masks and war paint to strike fear into the hearts of their enemies. Despite their reputation as brutal raiders, the Vikings were also skilled and sophisticated warriors. Their tactics, weapons, and battle strategies were among the most advanced of their time, and they allowed the Vikings to become one of the most feared and respected military powers of the Viking Age. Today, the legacy of Viking warfare lives on, and the tactics and strategies of the Vikings continue to inspire and fascinate people around the world. The Vikings were not only fearsome warriors, but they were also skilled tacticians and strategists, and their military prowess is a testament to the power of human ingenuity and resourcefulness in the face of conflict. The Viking Age in Ireland: how Vikings transformed Irish history and culture. The Viking Age in Ireland, which lasted from the late 8th to the mid-11th century, was a period of significant change and cultural exchange. During this time, Viking raiders established settlements along the Irish coast, and they left a lasting impact on Irish history and culture. The Vikings first arrived in Ireland in the late 8th century, and they quickly established settlements in Dublin, Waterford, and other coastal towns. These settlements were strategic bases for Viking raiders, who would launch attacks on Irish monasteries and towns, often taking captives and stealing valuable treasures. Despite their reputation as raiders, the Vikings also played a significant role in Irish culture and society. They brought with them new technologies, such as shipbuilding and metalworking, which had a significant impact on Irish trade and commerce. The Vikings also introduced new agricultural techniques and helped to improve the efficiency of Irish farming. Perhaps most significantly, the Vikings brought with them a rich and vibrant culture, which had a significant impact on Irish art, literature, and religion. The Vikings introduced new styles of jewelry and metalwork, which would later become a hallmark of Irish art. They also brought with them new stories and legends, which would later be incorporated into Irish mythology. The Vikings also played a significant role in the Christianization of Ireland. They established their own churches and monasteries, and they helped to spread the Christian faith throughout the country. The Vikings also introduced new religious practices, such as the use of runestones, which had a significant impact on Irish religious art and iconography. Despite their impact on Irish culture, the Vikings remained a constant threat to Irish security throughout the Viking Age. The Irish kings and chieftains frequently battled against Viking raiders, and there were numerous conflicts and wars between the Irish and the Vikings. Despite the conflicts, the Viking Age in Ireland was a time of significant cultural exchange and innovation. The Vikings brought with them new technologies, new ideas, and a rich and vibrant culture, which had a lasting impact on Irish history and society. Today, the legacy of the Vikings in Ireland lives on, and their impact on Irish culture continues to fascinate and inspire people around the world. The conversion of the Vikings: how Christianity changed the course of Viking history. The Vikings were known for their fierce pagan beliefs and their devotion to the Norse gods, such as Odin and Thor. But over time, many Vikings were converted to Christianity, and this had a profound impact on Viking history and culture. The process of Christianization in Viking society was a slow and gradual one. Christian missionaries first arrived in Scandinavia in the 9th century, and they encountered fierce resistance from the pagan Vikings. But over time, the message of Christianity began to spread, and many Vikings began to embrace the new faith. One of the key factors in the conversion of the Vikings was the influence of powerful Viking leaders, such as Olaf Tryggvason and Olaf II of Norway. These kings used their political power and influence to promote Christianity, and they were successful in convincing many Vikings to convert to the new faith. The Vikings were initially resistant to Christianity, as it challenged many of their traditional beliefs and practices. The Norse gods played a significant role in Viking culture, and they were closely tied to the concepts of honor, bravery, and victory in battle. Christianity, on the other hand, emphasized humility, forgiveness, and compassion. Despite these differences, many Vikings were drawn to the message of Christianity, as it offered a new sense of meaning and purpose in their lives. The Christian message of redemption and salvation provided a new way for the Vikings to understand their place in the world and their relationship with the divine. The conversion of the Vikings had a significant impact on Viking history and culture. Christianity helped to bring about a more peaceful and stable society, as it emphasized the importance of forgiveness and compassion. It also helped to foster a new sense of unity and solidarity among the different Viking groups, as they all shared a common faith. At the same time, the Christianization of the Vikings also had a significant impact on Viking art and literature. The Vikings began to produce a new type of art, which was influenced by Christian iconography and themes. They also began to write new stories and legends, which were heavily influenced by Christian teachings and beliefs. Today, the legacy of the Christianization of the Vikings lives on, and it continues to inspire and fascinate people around the world. The Vikings were not only fierce pagan warriors, but they were also capable of embracing new ideas and beliefs, and their willingness to change and adapt helped to shape the course of Viking history and culture. The legacy of the Vikings: how Viking culture and language influenced the world. The Vikings are often remembered as fierce raiders and conquerors, but their legacy extends far beyond their reputation as warriors. The Vikings had a significant impact on language, culture, and society, and their influence can still be felt today. One of the most significant legacies of the Vikings is their language. Old Norse, the language spoken by the Vikings, has had a lasting impact on the English language. Many common English words such as sky, knife, and law have their roots in Old Norse. The Vikings also introduced new words and phrases to the English language, such as berserk and ransack. The Vikings also had a significant impact on culture and society. They introduced new styles of art and architecture, which had a lasting impact on European culture. Viking art is characterized by its intricate metalwork and decorative patterns, which can be seen in everything from jewelry to weapons. Viking society was also unique in many ways. The Vikings had a complex social hierarchy, with different classes of people and a system of laws and punishments. They were also known for their seafaring skills and their ability to travel long distances in search of new lands and opportunities. Despite their reputation as raiders, the Vikings also played a significant role in trade and commerce. They established a network of trade routes across Europe and beyond, which allowed them to trade goods such as furs, fish, and precious metals. The Vikings also played a significant role in the development of the European economy, helping to establish new markets and trade relationships. The Vikings also had a significant impact on religion. They worshipped a pantheon of gods and goddesses, such as Odin, Thor, and Freya, and their religious practices were heavily influenced by the natural world. The Vikings also played a significant role in the spread of Christianity, as many Vikings were converted to the new faith over time. Today, the legacy of the Vikings can be seen in many different areas of life. Their language, culture, and influence can be felt in everything from the names of places to the stories we tell. The Vikings were a complex and fascinating people, and their legacy continues to inspire and fascinate people around the world. Chapter 4. The Norman Conquest of England. The Anglo-Saxon Kingdoms, How Society, Culture, and Politics Shaped Early England. The Anglo-Saxon Kingdoms were a group of 7 independent kingdoms that existed in England from the 5th to the 10th century. These kingdoms were known for their distinct cultures, societies, and political systems, and their legacy can still be seen in modern-day England. Society in the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms was structured around the concept of the comitatus, or warband. This was a group of warriors who pledged loyalty to a lord or king in exchange for protection and rewards. The comitatus was the basis of Anglo-Saxon society, and it formed the foundation of their military and political systems. Culture in the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms was heavily influenced by Germanic and Scandinavian traditions. The Anglo-Saxons were known for their poetry and storytelling, and many of their stories and legends have survived to the present day. They were also skilled metalworkers, and their jewelry and decorative objects were highly prized throughout Europe. Religion played an important role in Anglo-Saxon culture, and the conversion to Christianity had a profound impact on the society. The Anglo-Saxons were initially pagan, but over time they began to adopt Christianity, which helped to unify the kingdoms and establish a sense of national identity. Politics in the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms was characterized by a complex system of kingship, with power being distributed among the various kingdoms. Each kingdom had its own king, who was responsible for maintaining law and order within their own territory. The kings of the various kingdoms also engaged in frequent wars and battles, both with each other and with external enemies. One of the most significant events in Anglo-Saxon history was the Norman conquest of England in 1066. This marked the end of the Anglo-Saxon period and the beginning of the Norman era, and it had a profound impact on English culture and society. Despite the end of the Anglo-Saxon period, the legacy of the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms can still be seen in many aspects of modern-day England. The English language is descended from Old English, the language spoken by the Anglo-Saxons, and many English place names have their roots in Anglo-Saxon culture. The Anglo-Saxon kingdoms were a dynamic and complex society, and their legacy continues to inspire and fascinate people today. Their society, culture, and political systems were shaped by their unique history and traditions, and they played an important role in shaping the course of English history and culture. The Viking invasions, how the Vikings changed the course of European history. The Viking invasions of Europe, which began in the late 8th century, were a defining moment in European history. The Vikings were known for their seafaring skills, and their raids and settlements had a profound impact on the course of European history. The Vikings were skilled sailors and navigators, and they used their seafaring skills to launch raids on coastal communities throughout Europe. They were known for their ferocity and brutality, and their attacks often resulted in the destruction of entire villages and towns. The Vikings were not just raiders, however. They also established settlements throughout Europe, including in England, Ireland, and France. These settlements, known as Viking towns, were centers of trade and commerce, and they played a significant role in the development of European economy and society. One of the most significant Viking settlements was in England, where the Vikings established a number of different kingdoms, including the Kingdom of York and the Kingdom of East Anglia. These kingdoms were known for their unique cultures and societies, and they played an important role in the development of English history and culture. In addition to their raids and settlements, the Vikings also played a significant role in the development of European trade and commerce. They established a network of trade routes throughout Europe, which allowed them to trade goods such as furs, fish, and precious metals. The Viking invasions also had a significant impact on the development of European politics and society. The Vikings established a number of different kingdoms and settlements throughout Europe, which contributed to the fragmentation of European politics and the rise of feudalism. Despite their reputation as raiders, the Vikings also made significant contributions to European culture and society. They were skilled metalworkers, and their jewelry and decorative objects were highly prized throughout Europe. They also introduced new styles of art and architecture, which had a lasting impact on European culture. Today, the legacy of the Vikings can be seen in many aspects of European culture and society. The Vikings were a dynamic and complex people, and their influence can still be felt in everything from language to architecture. Their raids, settlements, and kingdoms played a significant role in shaping the course of European history, and their legacy continues to inspire and fascinate people around the world. The Battle of Hastings: How a Single Battle Changed the Course of English History. The Battle of Hastings, which took place on October 14, 1066, is one of the most significant events in English history. The battle was fought between the Norman French army of William, Duke of Normandy, and the English army of Harold Godwinson, the King of England. The battle was fought near the town of Hastings in southern England, and it was a pivotal moment in the struggle for the English throne. Harold had taken the throne in January 1066, following the death of Edward the Confessor, but his claim to the throne was challenged by William, who believed that he was the rightful heir to the English throne. The battle was fierce and brutal, and it lasted for the better part of a day. The English army fought bravely, but they were ultimately defeated by the superior tactics and organization of the Norman French army. The outcome of the Battle of Hastings had a profound impact on English history. William emerged as the conqueror of England, and he went on to establish the Norman dynasty, which had a significant impact on the development of English politics, society, and culture. One of the most significant consequences of the Norman conquest was the introduction of the French language to England. The Normans spoke a dialect of Old French, and their influence had a lasting impact on the development of the English language. Many words and phrases from Old French were adopted into the English language, and they continue to be used to this day. The Norman conquest also had a significant impact on the development of English law and government. William introduced the concept of feudalism to England, which was a system of social and political organization that was based on the ownership of land. Feudalism had a significant impact on the development of English society and politics, and it helped to shape the course of English history for centuries to come. Despite the impact of the Norman conquest, the Battle of Hastings remains a source of fascination and intrigue for people around the world. It was a defining moment in English history, and it continues to capture the imagination of people who are interested in the stories and legends of the past. The legacy of the battle can be seen in everything from literature to art, and it remains a testament to the enduring power of history to shape the world around us. The Norman Conquest: How William the Conqueror Changed the Course of English History. The Norman Conquest, which took place in 1066, was one of the most significant events in English history. The conquest was led by William, Duke of Normandy, who had a claim to the English throne. The conquest was brutal, and it involved a significant amount of bloodshed and destruction. However, it had a profound impact on the development of English society, politics, and culture. The Norman conquest began with the invasion of England by William and his army. The invasion was met with resistance from the English army, led by King Harold Godwinson. However, William's army was victorious, and Harold was killed in battle. With Harold dead, William was able to claim the English throne, and he became William the Conqueror. The Norman conquest had a significant impact on English society and culture. The Normans spoke a dialect of Old French, and their influence can be seen in the development of the English language. Many words and phrases from Old French were adopted into the English language, and they continue to be used to this day. The Norman conquest also introduced the concept of feudalism to England, which was a system of social and political organization that was based on the ownership of land. Feudalism had a significant impact on the development of English society and politics, and it helped to shape the course of English history for centuries to come. The Norman conquest also had a significant impact on the development of English architecture. The Normans brought with them a new style of architecture, which was characterized by the use of rounded arches, ribbed vaults, and other distinctive features. The Norman conquest also led to the construction of many new castles and fortifications throughout England. One of the most significant consequences of the Norman conquest was the Domesday Book. The Domesday Book was a survey of England that was ordered by William the Conqueror. It was an extensive survey of the land and property in England, and it was used to help William establish his authority over the country. The Domesday Book is an invaluable source of information about English society and culture during the Norman period. Despite the significant impact of the Norman conquest on English history, it also had a profound impact on the development of European history. The Normans were a powerful and influential group, and they had a significant impact on the development of European politics, society, and culture. In conclusion, the Norman conquest was a pivotal moment in English history. It changed the course of English history, and it had a profound impact on the development of English society, politics, and culture. The legacy of the Norman conquest can be seen in everything from language to architecture, and it remains an important chapter in the history of England and Europe. The Harrying of the North: How Norman Suppression Sparked a Rebellion in England. The Harrying of the North, also known as the Harrowing of the North, was a brutal campaign of suppression and violence carried out by the Normans in the late 11th century. The campaign was led by William the Conqueror, and was aimed at suppressing rebellion and unrest in the northern regions of England. The Harrying of the North was a devastating event in English history, and it had a lasting impact on the development of English society and culture. The rebellion in the North began after the death of William the Conqueror in 1087. His successor William Rufus faced a rebellion by the northern barons who were dissatisfied with his rule. In response, William Rufus ordered a campaign of suppression in the north, led by his trusted advisor, William de St. Calais, Bishop of Durham. The campaign was designed to put down the rebellion and establish Norman control over the region. The Harrying of the North was a brutal campaign of violence and destruction. The Normans burned crops and destroyed villages, leading to famine and starvation in the region. Many people were killed or forced to flee their homes, and the region was left devastated. The campaign was so devastating that it is said that it took decades for the region to recover. The Harrying of the North had a profound impact on English society and culture. It created a deep sense of resentment and anger towards the Normans and their rule. This anger led to a series of uprisings and rebellions in the years that followed, as the English people sought to regain their freedom and independence. The rebellion in the North was significant because it was one of the first major challenges to Norman rule in England. It showed that the Normans were not invincible, and that the English people were willing to fight for their freedom and independence. The rebellion also showed that the Norman policy of suppression and violence was not effective in establishing long-term control over the region. Despite the devastation caused by the Harrying of the North, it is important to note that it did not result in the complete destruction of English society and culture. The English people were able to rebuild their communities and their lives, and they continued to resist Norman rule in the years that followed. In conclusion, the Harrying of the North was a devastating event in English history. It was a brutal campaign of suppression and violence that led to widespread destruction and devastation. However, it also sparked a rebellion in the North that challenged Norman rule and showed that the English people were willing to fight for their freedom and independence. The legacy of the Harrying of the North can be seen in the resilience and determination of the English people, and it remains an important chapter in the history of England. The Domesday Book: How a Comprehensive Survey of England Changed Taxation and Administration. The Domesday Book, also known as the Great Survey, was a comprehensive survey of England carried out by the Normans in the late 11th century. The survey was ordered by William the Conqueror and was designed to record the ownership, value, and productivity of land across England. The Domesday Book was a remarkable achievement of administration and taxation, and it had a lasting impact on the development of English society and government. The Domesday Book was a massive undertaking. It involved a detailed survey of every piece of land in England, and it recorded information on landowners, tenants, crops, livestock, and buildings. The survey was carried out by commissioners appointed by William the Conqueror, and it took several years to complete. The result was a detailed and comprehensive record of England's land and its people. The Domesday Book was a major achievement of administration and taxation. It allowed the Normans to establish a comprehensive system of taxation that was based on the value and productivity of land. The survey provided a detailed record of the ownership and productivity of land, and it allowed the Normans to assess the value of land for taxation purposes. This system of taxation was used for centuries to come and became a fundamental part of English society. The Domesday Book also had a significant impact on the development of English government. The survey provided a detailed record of land ownership and productivity, which allowed the Normans to establish a system of administration that was based on the ownership of land. This system of administration was used to establish the feudal system of government, which was based on the relationship between lords and vassals. The survey also allowed the Normans to establish a system of justice that was based on the ownership of land, which became the foundation of the English legal system. Despite the remarkable achievement of the Domesday Book, it is important to note that it was not without its flaws. The survey was based on the ownership of land, which meant that many people were not included in the survey. The survey also did not provide a comprehensive record of the people who lived on the land, which meant that the survey did not reflect the full extent of English society and culture. In conclusion, the Domesday Book was a remarkable achievement of administration and taxation. It provided a comprehensive survey of England that allowed the Normans to establish a system of taxation and administration that became a fundamental part of English society. The Domesday Book also had a significant impact on the development of English government, and it provided the foundation for the feudal system of government and the English legal system. While the survey was not without its flaws, the Domesday Book remains an important chapter in the history of England and a testament to the remarkable achievements of administration and taxation. The Norman Church: how the Normans changed the face of Christianity in England. The Normans, who conquered England in 1066, brought with them a new style of Christian worship and a new vision of church architecture. The Norman Church was marked by its grandeur, its imposing architecture, and its intricate iconography. The Normans used the church as a tool for reform and consolidation of their power, but they also contributed to the development of English culture and society. The Norman Church was a powerful symbol of Norman power and influence. It was designed to impress and awe its viewers, and it was often the largest and most imposing building in any town or village. The Norman Church was designed to be grand and imposing, with tall arches, intricate carvings, and striking stained glass windows. The architecture of the Norman Church was characterized by the use of rounded arches, which allowed for greater height and weight-bearing capacity. This new style of architecture was also more resistant to fire and natural disasters, which made the Norman Church a more durable and long-lasting building. In addition to its impressive architecture, the Norman Church was marked by its intricate iconography. The Normans used art and symbolism to communicate their message and to promote their political and religious agenda. The Norman Church was decorated with elaborate carvings and paintings that depicted scenes from the Bible and from Norman history. The iconography of the Norman Church was designed to be didactic, to teach the people the lessons of Christianity and to promote the values of the Norman conquest. The Norman Church was also used as a tool for reform. The Normans brought with them a new vision of Christian worship, one that emphasized the power and authority of the Church. The Norman Church was marked by its use of Latin, its elaborate liturgy, and its emphasis on the sacraments. The Normans also brought with them a new system of ecclesiastical organization, one that emphasized the power and authority of the bishops and abbots. The Norman Church was a powerful instrument of Norman rule, and it was used to consolidate the power and authority of the Norman rulers. Despite its political and religious functions, the Norman Church also contributed to the development of English culture and society. The Norman Church brought with it a new style of art and architecture, one that would influence English culture for centuries to come. The Norman Church also brought with it a new sense of Christian devotion and piety, one that would transform English religious life. In conclusion, the Norman Church was a remarkable achievement of architecture, art, and religion. It was a powerful symbol of Norman power and influence, and it was used to promote the political and religious agenda of the Norman rulers. The Norman Church was also a tool for reform, and it was used to establish a new system of Christian worship and ecclesiastical organization. Despite its political and religious functions, the Norman Church also contributed to the development of English culture and society, and it remains a testament to the remarkable achievements of the Normans in England. The Angevin Empire, how Henry II, Eleanor of Aquitaine, and Richard the Lionheart ruled England and France. The Angevin Empire was a vast and powerful domain that stretched across England and much of France during the 12th century. It was ruled by the Plantagenet dynasty, which was founded by Henry II, the son of the Empress Matilda and Geoffrey of Anjou. Henry II married Eleanor of Aquitaine, who brought with her the wealthy and influential lands of Aquitaine, Gascony, and Poitou. Together, Henry and Eleanor established a powerful empire that was marked by its cultural and political achievements. At the heart of the Angevin Empire was Henry II, a dynamic and ambitious ruler who was known for his legal reforms, his military campaigns, and his patronage of the arts. Henry was a master of political strategy and negotiation, and he was able to expand the power of the Plantagenets across England and France through a series of shrewd alliances and military campaigns. Henry's reign was marked by the creation of a common law system and the establishment of the jury trial, which laid the foundations for modern legal systems. Eleanor of Aquitaine was also a remarkable figure in the Angevin Empire. As the wealthiest and most influential woman in Europe, Eleanor brought a new level of sophistication and culture to the Plantagenet court. She was a patron of the arts and literature, and she encouraged the development of troubadour poetry, which celebrated love and courtly ideals. Eleanor was also a political force in her own right, and she played a key role in the rebellion against Henry II led by her sons. One of Eleanor's sons was Richard the Lionheart, who is perhaps the most famous of the Plantagenet rulers. Richard was a legendary warrior and military leader, who led the Third Crusade and won fame for his chivalry and bravery on the battlefield. Richard was also a patron of the arts, and he was known for his love of music and poetry. Richard's reign was marked by his rivalry with his younger brother John, who would eventually succeed him as king. The Angevin Empire was also marked by its cultural achievements. The Plantagenet court was a center of learning and the arts, and it produced some of the most celebrated poets, musicians, and writers of the age. The troubadour tradition, which was established by Eleanor of Aquitaine, celebrated courtly love and chivalric ideals, and it had a profound influence on the development of European literature and culture. In conclusion, the Angevin Empire was a remarkable achievement of culture, politics, and military power. It was ruled by a series of dynamic and ambitious rulers, who established a powerful domain that stretched across England and much of France. The Angevin Empire was marked by its legal reforms, its military campaigns, and its cultural achievements, which laid the foundations for modern English and French culture. The Angevin Empire remains a testament to the remarkable achievements of the Plantagenet dynasty, and it continues to captivate our imaginations and inspire us today. The Magna Carta, how the Great Charter established the principles of liberty, justice, and the rule of law. The Magna Carta, also known as the Great Charter, is one of the most important documents in English history. It was signed by King John of England in 1215, and it established the principles of liberty, justice, and the rule of law that would shape the development of English and American legal systems for centuries to come. The Magna Carta was the result of a long struggle between King John and his barons, who were frustrated by the king's tyrannical rule and excessive taxation. The barons had become increasingly powerful in the 12th century, and they saw the Magna Carta as a way to protect their own interests and limit the power of the king. The Magna Carta was a comprehensive document that covered a wide range of topics. It established the principle of due process, which means that everyone is entitled to a fair and impartial trial. It also limited the power of the king to impose taxes without the consent of his subjects. It also established the principle of habeas corpus, which means that no one can be held in prison without a trial. These principles are still fundamental to the legal systems of many countries today. The Magna Carta also established the principle of the rule of law, which means that everyone, including the king, is subject to the law. This was a revolutionary idea at the time, as the king had previously been considered above the law. The Magna Carta was a vital step in the development of modern democratic systems, as it established the principle that no one is above the law and that everyone is entitled to the same legal protections. The Magna Carta had a profound impact on the development of English law and government. It was reissued many times in the centuries that followed, and it was often used as a model for other legal documents and constitutions. It was also an important influence on the American founding fathers, who saw the Magna Carta as a symbol of the struggle for liberty and justice. In conclusion, the Magna Carta is one of the most important documents in English history. It established the principles of liberty, justice, and the rule of law that have shaped the development of modern legal and political systems. The Magna Carta was a powerful symbol of the struggle for freedom and justice, and it remains an important influence on the development of democratic societies today. The legacy of the Norman Conquest, how William the Conqueror shaped the English language, legal system, and identity. The Norman Conquest of England in 1066 was a pivotal moment in English history, one that would shape the country's language, legal system, and identity for centuries to come. Led by William the Conqueror, the Normans brought with them a different culture, language, and legal system that had a lasting impact on England. One of the most significant legacies of the Norman Conquest is the impact it had on the English language. Before the conquest, English was a Germanic language, with many dialects and regional variations. After the conquest, the Normans introduced a Romance language, Old French, which had a significant impact on the English language. Many French words and phrases were adopted into English, and the language became more standardized and formal. This linguistic fusion gave birth to Middle English, which became the language of literature, law, and administration in England. Another important legacy of the Norman Conquest was the legal system. William the Conqueror introduced a new system of law, known as the Norman or feudal law, which was based on the system used in Normandy. This system emphasized the importance of land ownership and established a hierarchy of social classes, with the king at the top. The legal system was centralized, with the king as the ultimate authority, and it laid the foundation for the common law system that would develop in England. The Norman Conquest also had a profound impact on English identity. The Normans were a foreign ruling class, and their language and culture were different from the native English. The conquest led to a period of cultural fusion and conflict, as the Normans and English struggled to coexist. However, over time, a distinct English identity emerged, one that blended elements of both Norman and English cultures. This identity was shaped by the shared experiences of the two groups, as well as the ongoing struggles for power and influence. In conclusion, the legacy of the Norman Conquest is far-reaching and continues to shape English culture, language, and identity to this day. The impact of the conquest can be seen in the English language, the legal system, and the sense of identity that has developed over time. While the conquest was a period of conflict and struggle, it ultimately led to a cultural fusion that created a unique and enduring English identity. Chapter 5. The Crusades and the Holy Roman Empire. The rise of the Holy Roman Empire, how Charlemagne and Otto the Great forged a new empire in Europe. The Holy Roman Empire is one of the most important political entities in European history, and it emerged as a result of the efforts of two of the most influential rulers of the early medieval period, Charlemagne and Otto the Great. These two leaders worked tirelessly to establish a new political order that would bring stability and prosperity to Europe. Charlemagne, also known as Charles the Great, was the first ruler to lay the groundwork for the Holy Roman Empire. He became the king of the Franks in 768, and over the next several decades he expanded his kingdom through a series of conquests. In 800, he was crowned emperor by the Pope, marking the beginning of a new era in European history. Charlemagne's reign was characterized by a commitment to learning, culture, and religion. He supported the arts and sciences, and he established schools and monasteries throughout his empire. His efforts laid the foundation for a new European civilization that would thrive for centuries. After Charlemagne's death, his empire was divided among his three grandsons, and it began to decline. However, the empire was revived by the efforts of Otto the Great, who became the king of Germany in 936. Otto was a skilled military leader, and he worked tirelessly to establish a new political order in Europe. He re-established the power of the king, and he fought wars against the Magyars and the Slavs, expanding the empire's borders. In 962, Otto was crowned emperor by the Pope, and the Holy Roman Empire was officially born. The empire was a confederation of states, with the emperor as the ultimate authority. It was a complex political entity that brought together many different regions and peoples, and it lasted for nearly 1,000 years. The legacy of Charlemagne and Otto the Great is significant, and it can still be seen in Europe today. The Holy Roman Empire established a new political order that brought stability and prosperity to Europe, and it set the stage for the development of modern nation-states. The empire also had a profound impact on European culture, fostering a rich tradition of art, literature, and music. In conclusion, the rise of the Holy Roman Empire was a complex and multifaceted process, shaped by the efforts of two of the most important rulers in European history. Charlemagne and Otto the Great worked tirelessly to establish a new political order that would bring stability and prosperity to Europe, and their legacy can still be seen in the political, cultural, and artistic traditions of Europe today. The investiture controversy: how the struggle for control between the Pope and the Emperor shaped medieval Europe. The investiture controversy was one of the most significant events in medieval European history, shaping the relationship between church and state for centuries to come. At the heart of the controversy was a struggle for power between the Pope and the Emperor, as each sought to assert authority over the church and the state. The controversy began in the late 11th century when Pope Gregory VII, a reformist pope, sought to assert the authority of the papacy over the appointment of bishops and other church officials. This was in direct conflict with the practice of lay investiture, in which secular rulers appointed church officials. The issue came to a head when Henry IV, the Holy Roman Emperor, appointed an archbishop without the Pope's approval. Pope Gregory responded by excommunicating the emperor, effectively cutting him off from the church. Henry, in turn, called a council of bishops and declared the Pope deposed. The struggle continued for several years, with both sides making concessions and alliances with various European powers. Eventually, a compromise was reached with the Concordat of Worms in 1122, which recognized the Pope's authority to appoint bishops, but allowed secular rulers to invest them with their symbols of office. The investiture controversy had far-reaching consequences for both the church and the state. It demonstrated the power of the papacy to assert its authority over secular rulers and established the principle of church independence from state control. It also led to the development of a distinct European legal tradition, as the controversy forced rulers to define their relationship with the church and establish laws to govern it. In addition, the controversy had a significant impact on the political landscape of Europe. It weakened the power of the Holy Roman Empire and contributed to the fragmentation of power in Europe. The papacy, on the other hand, gained significant power and influence in the following centuries as it continued to assert its authority over secular rulers. In conclusion, the investiture controversy was a pivotal moment in medieval European history, shaping the relationship between church and state and the development of European law and politics. The struggle for power between the Pope and the Emperor demonstrated the ability of the papacy to assert its authority and set the stage for the development of a distinct European legal tradition. The controversy also had significant consequences for the political landscape of Europe, contributing to the fragmentation of power and the rise of the papacy as a major political force. The First Crusade: How a Holy War Changed the Course of History. The First Crusade was a significant event in medieval European history, driven by religious fervor and political ambitions. It was a military campaign that lasted from 1096 to 1099, during which an army of European Christians set out to reclaim the Holy Land from Muslim rule. The Crusade had a profound impact on the course of European history, changing the political, cultural, and religious landscape of the continent. The origins of the First Crusade can be traced back to the 11th century, when the Seljuk Turks took control of Jerusalem and began to restrict access to Christian pilgrims. This sparked outrage among European Christians, who saw the Holy Land as a sacred place that had been desecrated by Muslim rule. In addition to religious motivations, the Crusade was also fueled by political ambitions, as various European leaders sought to expand their power and influence in the region. The Crusade was led by a number of prominent European leaders, including Raymond of Toulouse, Bohemond of Taranto, and Godfrey of Bouillon. They were joined by a diverse group of warriors, including knights, peasants, and religious figures. The Crusaders traveled overland from Europe to Jerusalem, facing numerous obstacles and hardships along the way. After several months of travel and fighting, the Crusaders finally reached Jerusalem in the summer of 1099. They laid siege to the city, eventually breaching its walls and killing its Muslim inhabitants. The conquest of Jerusalem was a significant victory for the Crusaders, and it marked the beginning of a new era in the history of the Holy Land. The First Crusade had a profound impact on the course of European history. It brought about significant changes in the political, cultural, and religious landscape of the continent. The Crusade contributed to the development of a distinct European identity and led to the growth of European power and influence in the Middle East. It also had a significant impact on the development of Christianity, as the idea of holy war became more deeply entrenched in the religious consciousness of Europeans. In conclusion, the First Crusade was a pivotal moment in medieval European history, driven by religious fervor and political ambitions. The Crusade was led by a diverse group of leaders and warriors, who traveled overland to reclaim the Holy Land from Muslim rule. The conquest of Jerusalem was a significant victory for the Crusaders, and marked the beginning of a new era in the history of the region. The First Crusade had a significant impact on the course of European history, contributing to the development of a distinct European identity and the growth of European power and influence in the Middle East. The Second Crusade: How a Failed Holy War Shaped the Future of Europe. The Second Crusade was a significant event in medieval European history, driven by religious fervor and political ambitions. It was a military campaign that lasted from 1147 to 1149, during which an army of European Christians set out to recapture the city of Edessa from Muslim rule. Despite the significant resources and manpower devoted to the crusade, it ended in failure and had far-reaching consequences for the future of Europe. The origins of the Second Crusade can be traced back to the fall of Edessa to Muslim forces in 1144. The capture of Edessa was a significant blow to the Christian world, as the city had been one of the few remaining Christian strongholds in the region. In response to this defeat, Pope Eugene III called for a new crusade to be launched, with the aim of recapturing Edessa and re-establishing Christian dominance in the region. The Second Crusade was led by a number of prominent European leaders, including Louis VII of France and Conrad III of Germany. They were joined by a diverse group of warriors, including knights, peasants, and religious figures. The Crusaders traveled overland from Europe to the Middle East, facing numerous obstacles and hardships along the way. Despite the significant resources and manpower devoted to the crusade, it ultimately ended in failure. The Crusaders were plagued by a number of problems, including poor leadership, infighting, and supply shortages. They were also defeated in a number of significant battles, including the Siege of Damascus in 1148. The failure of the Second Crusade had far-reaching consequences for the future of Europe. It dealt a significant blow to the prestige and authority of the Christian Church, which had been a driving force behind the Crusade. It also led to increased tensions between the European powers, as various leaders blamed each other for the failure of the Crusade. In addition, the Second Crusade had a significant impact on the course of European history. It contributed to the development of a distinct European identity and the growth of European power and influence in the Middle East. It also led to the emergence of new military orders, such as the Knights Templar and the Knights Hospitaller, which played a significant role in future crusades. In conclusion, the Second Crusade was a significant event in medieval European history, driven by religious fervor and political ambitions. Despite the significant resources and manpower devoted to the crusade, it ultimately ended in failure and had far-reaching consequences for the future of Europe. The failure of the Second Crusade dealt a significant blow to the prestige and authority of the Christian Church, led to increased tensions between the European powers, and had a significant impact on the development of a distinct European identity and the growth of European power and influence in the Middle East. During the 11th century, the Holy Roman Empire was in a state of chaos. Rulers were appointed by the Church, who was embroiled in the investiture controversy with the Holy Roman Emperor. The Salian dynasty was established in 1024 AD, and Henry III, known as the Black, became the Holy Roman Emperor. He established the first peaceful and prosperous period for the Holy Roman Empire in many years, and his reign marked a significant turning point in the empire's history. Henry IV, Henry III's son, ascended to the throne in 1056 AD, and his reign was marked by political turmoil and challenges to his authority. The investiture controversy between the emperor and the papacy intensified, as the pope argued that the emperor had no right to appoint bishops and abbots. This caused a rift in the church and led to the creation of the Gregorian reforms. Henry IV's reign was characterized by conflict with the pope, as he refused to recognize the Church's power over him. This conflict led to a series of wars and the excommunication of Henry IV. The German princes took advantage of Henry IV's weakness and organized the Great Saxon Revolt, which led to the emperor's forced abdication in 1105 AD. The Salian dynasty ended with the death of Henry V in 1125 AD. His death marked the beginning of a period of instability and conflict in the Holy Roman Empire. The German princes, who had played an important role in Henry IV's downfall, gained more power and autonomy. This led to a period of decentralization and the emergence of a new system of governance, in which the princes held more power and the emperor's role became more ceremonial. The Salian dynasty, despite its short existence, was a critical period in the history of the Holy Roman Empire. The period saw the establishment of a new system of governance, and the investiture controversy led to a separation of church and state. The era was also marked by conflict, but it laid the foundation for the development of the Holy Roman Empire and helped shape the future of Europe. In the 12th century, the Holy Land was a place of religious and political strife. The Crusades were a series of military expeditions launched by European powers to reclaim the Holy Land from Muslim control. The Third Crusade was one of the most significant, as it involved the most powerful leaders of the time, Richard the Lionheart of England, Philip II of France, and Frederick I of the Holy Roman Empire. The Third Crusade was a dramatic chapter in the history of the Crusades, marked by epic battles, strategic alliances, and diplomatic maneuvering. The Third Crusade began in 1189 AD, following the fall of Jerusalem to Muslim forces. The leaders of the Crusade, Richard the Lionheart, Philip II of France, and Frederick I of the Holy Roman Empire, joined forces to retake the city. However, the alliance was strained, as each leader had different objectives and priorities. In particular, Richard the Lionheart and Philip II had a long-standing rivalry, which made it difficult to form a united front. The Crusaders made significant progress in the early stages of the campaign, retaking key cities such as Acre and Jaffa. However, the alliance between the leaders began to unravel, and they split up to pursue their own objectives. Richard the Lionheart emerged as the most successful of the leaders, with his brilliant military tactics and strategic alliances. He made a peace treaty with Saladin, the Muslim leader, which allowed Christian pilgrims to visit Jerusalem without fear of harm. The Battle of Arsuf was one of the most significant battles of the Third Crusade. Richard the Lionheart led his forces in a decisive victory against Saladin, which secured their position in the Holy Land. The battle demonstrated Richard's tactical genius and his ability to lead his troops to victory. Despite Richard's successes, the Crusaders were ultimately unable to retake Jerusalem. Richard was forced to return to England due to political turmoil, and the other leaders were unable to maintain a united front. The Third Crusade ended in a stalemate, with both sides agreeing to a truce that allowed Christians to visit the Holy Land but did not grant them control over Jerusalem. The legacy of the Third Crusade was complex. On one hand, it was a military failure, as the Crusaders were unable to achieve their primary objective of retaking Jerusalem. On the other hand, it was a diplomatic success, as Richard the Lionheart's peace treaty with Saladin established a period of relative peace in the Holy Land. The Third Crusade also marked the beginning of a new era in European history, in which the power of the monarchs began to rise and the Church's authority began to decline. The Crusades had a lasting impact on the development of Europe and the Middle East, and the Third Crusade was a critical chapter in this history. The Hohenstaufen dynasty, Frederick Barbarossa and the struggle for Italy. Frederick Barbarossa was one of the most powerful and influential Holy Roman emperors of the Middle Ages. He was the first of the Hohenstaufen dynasty, which would rule Germany, Italy, and Sicily for much of the 12th and 13th centuries. Frederick's reign was marked by conflict, both within his own territories and with other European powers. Perhaps his most notable struggle was with the papacy, which became a major source of tension during his reign. Frederick's rule began in 1152, when he was elected Holy Roman Emperor by the German princes. One of his first acts as emperor was to attempt to gain control over the northern Italian cities, which were among the wealthiest and most powerful in Europe. However, his efforts were met with fierce resistance from the Italian cities, which had formed the Lombard League to defend their independence. In 1154, Frederick led a massive army into Italy to subdue the Lombard League. He was initially successful, and in 1155 he was crowned King of Italy in Pavia. However, his victory was short-lived, and in 1158 the Lombard League won a decisive victory over his forces at the Battle of Legnano. The Treaty of Constance, signed in 1183, recognized the independence of the Italian cities and brought an end to the conflict. Despite the setback in Italy, Frederick remained a powerful figure in Europe. He launched several campaigns in Eastern Europe, fighting against the Byzantine Empire and the Kingdom of Hungary. In 1189, he joined the Third Crusade, along with King Richard the Lionheart of England and King Philip II of France, in an attempt to recapture Jerusalem from the Muslims. The crusade ultimately failed, but Frederick's role in it helped to solidify his reputation as one of the most powerful monarchs of his time. Frederick's reign was also marked by conflict with the papacy. He clashed with several popes over issues of church reform and imperial authority. In 1176, he was excommunicated by Pope Alexander III, but he was eventually reconciled with the papacy in 1177. The conflict between the papacy and the empire continued, however, and after Frederick's death it would escalate into the investiture controversy. Despite the struggles of his reign, Frederick Barbarossa is remembered as a great ruler and a key figure in European history. He was a patron of the arts, and his court in Palermo was renowned for its cultural and intellectual achievements. He was also a skilled diplomat and military leader, whose campaigns and alliances helped to shape the political landscape of Europe for centuries to come. The Fourth Crusade, launched in 1202, was originally intended to recapture the Holy Land from Muslim control. However, it ended up being a disastrous campaign that led to the looting and sacking of the city of Constantinople, one of the greatest cities in the world at the time. This chapter will explore the events that led up to the Fourth Crusade and the reasons for its failure. At the start of the 12th century, the Byzantine Empire, centered on Constantinople, was in decline. The emperors had become weak and unable to defend their empire against external threats, and internal corruption and instability were rife. In 1185, a rebellion led by a Bulgarian nobleman named Asen resulted in the creation of a new Bulgarian state that challenged Byzantine power in the Balkans. At the same time, the Holy Roman Empire was growing in strength under the Hohenstaufen dynasty, and its leaders were eager to assert their authority over the Christian world. In 1198, Pope Innocent III called for a new crusade to retake Jerusalem. The call was answered by a group of knights from France, Flanders, and Germany, who set out for the Holy Land in 1202. However, the crusade was doomed from the start. The Crusaders had been promised financial and military support from the Venetian Republic, but they were unable to pay the agreed-upon sum, and as a result, the Venetians refused to transport them to the Holy Land. Instead, they convinced the Crusaders to attack the wealthy city of Constantinople, which had been weakened by years of conflict with the Bulgarians. In 1204, the Crusaders launched a surprise attack on Constantinople, which was poorly defended. The city was sacked, and many of its treasures and relics were stolen. The Byzantine Emperor, Alexios IV, was deposed and killed, and the Latin Empire of Constantinople was established. The Fourth Crusade had ended in failure, not only because the Crusaders had failed to achieve their original goal of recapturing the Holy Land, but also because they had committed an act of treachery against their fellow Christians. The Fourth Crusade had a profound impact on the Byzantine Empire. The loss of Constantinople weakened the empire to the point that it was unable to resist further attacks from its enemies. Over the next few decades, the Byzantine Empire was further fragmented by internal conflicts, and it was eventually conquered by the Ottoman Turks in 1453. In conclusion, the Fourth Crusade was a disastrous campaign that had a long-lasting impact on the Byzantine Empire and the wider world. The sacking of Constantinople was a tragic event that contributed to the decline of one of the greatest cities in history, and the failure of the crusade undermined the credibility of the Catholic Church and its leaders. Despite its failure, the Fourth Crusade remains an important event in the history of the Christian world, and serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of greed and treachery. The Holy Roman Empire was a complex and evolving political entity that lasted for over a millennium, spanning from the coronation of Charlemagne as Emperor of the Romans in the year 800 to its dissolution in 1806. Throughout its long history, the empire faced many challenges and changes, but few were more significant than the establishment of the Golden Bull in 1356. The Golden Bull was a document that outlined the rules for the election of the Holy Roman Emperor, a position that was considered the highest secular office in medieval Europe. The name of the document comes from the golden seal that was affixed to it, which was supposed to signify the importance and sacredness of its contents. Before the Golden Bull, the election of the emperor was a complicated process that often involved conflicting interests and rivalries among the various German princes who had the right to vote. The result was often a chaotic and unpredictable process that could lead to disputes, civil war, and even foreign intervention. The Golden Bull sought to remedy these issues by establishing a more formal and regulated system for the election of the emperor. It defined the number of electors who had the right to vote, 7, their territories and their duties, as well as the rules for their election and the eligibility criteria for the candidates. The Golden Bull also defined the powers and prerogatives of the emperor, including his right to appoint and dismiss officials, levy taxes, and mint coins, as well as his role as the protector of the church and the defender of the empire. The establishment of the Golden Bull was a significant moment in the history of the Holy Roman Empire. It helped to stabilize the political situation in Germany and reduce the risk of civil war and foreign intervention, which had been a persistent problem for many years. It also reinforced the power and authority of the emperor, giving him more legitimacy and stability in his position. The Golden Bull remained in force until the dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire in 1806. Despite its many flaws and limitations, it represented a crucial step towards the development of a more stable and centralized political system in Germany, which would later become the basis for the modern German state. The Crusades and the Holy Roman Empire were two of the most significant events of the medieval period, and their legacy can still be felt today. The Crusades were a series of military campaigns undertaken by European Christians in the 11th–13th centuries to regain control of the Holy Land from the Muslims. The Holy Roman Empire, on the other hand, was a political entity that existed in Central Europe from the 10th century until the 19th century, encompassing much of modern-day Germany, Austria, and parts of Italy. The legacy of the Crusades and the Holy Roman Empire is complex and multifaceted. On the one hand, they were responsible for spreading Christianity throughout Europe and beyond, and they played a significant role in the development of Western culture and civilization. The Crusades, in particular, had a profound impact on European history, and they helped to shape the political and religious landscape of the medieval world. At the same time, the Crusades and the Holy Roman Empire were also characterized by violence, conflict, and cultural clashes. The Crusades, in particular, were marked by atrocities committed against Muslims, Jews, and other non-Christians, and they are still viewed by many as a symbol of Western aggression and imperialism. The Holy Roman Empire, meanwhile, was plagued by internal conflicts and power struggles, as well as tensions between the imperial authority and the various regional powers that made up the empire. Despite these complexities and contradictions, the legacy of the Crusades and the Holy Roman Empire is still felt today. Many of the cultural and political institutions that we take for granted in the modern world can be traced back to these two historical phenomena. For example, the idea of the nation-state, with its emphasis on sovereignty and territorial integrity, can be traced back to the rise of the Holy Roman Empire and the development of the concept of the nation in medieval Europe. Similarly, the legacy of the Crusades can be seen in the ongoing conflicts between the Muslim world and the West, as well as in the cultural and artistic achievements of medieval Europe. Ultimately, the legacy of the Crusades and the Holy Roman Empire is both positive and negative. While they were responsible for many of the great achievements of medieval Europe, they were also marked by violence, conflict, and cultural clashes. Nevertheless, their impact on the modern world cannot be denied, and they remain an important part of the cultural and historical heritage of Europe and the world as a whole. Chapter 6. The 100 Years' War, England and France. The 100 Years' War was a protracted conflict between England and France that lasted from 1337 to 1453. The origins of this long and bloody conflict can be traced back to the dynastic rivalries and territorial disputes that emerged between the two kingdoms in the late Middle Ages. At the heart of the conflict was the question of the succession to the French throne. The last Capetian king of France, Charles IV, died in 1328 without a male heir. The succession then passed to his closest male relative, Philip VI, the first king of the Valois dynasty. This decision was challenged by Edward III of England, who was the son of Charles IV's sister, Isabella. Edward III argued that he had a legitimate claim to the French throne, based on his descent from the Capetian dynasty. His claim was further strengthened by the fact that he had been the vassal of Philip VI until 1337, when he refused to pay homage to the French king and instead declared himself the rightful king of France. In addition to the dynastic dispute, there were also significant territorial disputes between England and France. These centered on the possession of the Duchy of Aquitaine, which had been held by the English since the 12th century. The French king, however, maintained that Aquitaine was rightfully his, and sought to reassert his authority over the region. These territorial and dynastic disputes were exacerbated by a series of economic and social factors. Both France and England were experiencing economic hardship in the 14th century, and the burden of taxation fell heavily on the peasantry. This led to social unrest and popular uprisings, such as the Jacquerie in France and the Peasants' Revolt in England. The origins of the 100 Years' War, therefore, can be seen as a complex interplay of political, economic, and social factors. The dynastic and territorial disputes between England and France were further complicated by broader economic and social trends that were affecting both countries. In the year 1346, a great battle was fought between the English and French armies near the small village of Crécy in northern France. It was a battle that would go down in history as one of the most important of the 100 Years' War, and one that would shape the course of European history for centuries to come. The English army was led by King Edward III, who had invaded France in an attempt to claim the French crown for himself. His army was small, consisting of just 10,000 men, but it was highly trained and well-equipped. The French army, on the other hand, was much larger, numbering around 35,000 men, but it was poorly led and poorly equipped. The two armies met on the battlefield at Crécy, and what followed was a fierce and bloody battle that would last for several hours. The French knights charged the English lines, but were met with a withering hail of arrows from the English longbowmen. The French knights were no match for the deadly accuracy and range of the English longbows, and were cut down in droves. The battle raged on for hours, with the English forces holding their ground and repelling wave after wave of French attacks. In the end, the French army was decisively defeated, with thousands of men killed and many more captured. The English, on the other hand, suffered relatively few casualties, and were able to claim a great victory. The Battle of Crécy was a turning point in the 100 Years' War, and it marked the beginning of a new era in warfare. The longbow had proved its worth as a deadly weapon, and would go on to become a staple of the English army for centuries to come. The battle also demonstrated the importance of discipline, training, and tactics in warfare, and paved the way for future military innovations. In the end, the Battle of Crécy was a triumph for the English and a devastating defeat for the French. It was a battle that would be remembered for centuries to come, and one that would shape the course of European history. During the 100 Years' War, the French port city of Calais became a crucial strategic location for both the French and the English. Its close proximity to England made it an ideal base for the English, while its location on the coast of the English Channel allowed the French to use it as a staging ground for their naval expeditions. In 1346, the English launched a massive invasion of France, culminating in the Battle of Crécy. In the aftermath of the battle, the English army marched towards Calais, intent on capturing the city. The siege of Calais began on September 4, 1346, and lasted for almost a year. The city was surrounded by a massive English army, which cut off all supplies to the city. The citizens of Calais were left with no choice but to surrender or face starvation. However, King Edward III of England was not content with a simple surrender. He demanded that 6 of the most prominent citizens of Calais present themselves to him, with nooses around their necks to be executed for their defiance. The mayor of Calais, Eustache de Saint-Pierre, along with 5 other citizens, bravely volunteered to sacrifice themselves for the sake of their city. They presented themselves to the English army, wearing simple robes and carrying the keys to the city. The English were so impressed by their bravery that Edward III spared their lives and ordered that they be treated with the utmost respect. The siege of Calais was a turning point in the 100 Years' War, and the bravery of the citizens of Calais inspired others to stand up against their oppressors. The story of Eustache de Saint-Pierre and the other citizens who volunteered to sacrifice themselves became a legend, and was immortalized in art and literature for centuries to come. The siege of Calais marked the beginning of a long and bloody conflict between England and France, which would last for over a century. It was a conflict that would shape the future of both nations and leave an indelible mark on the history of Europe. The bravery and sacrifice of the citizens of Calais would go down in history as an example of the power of the human spirit, and a testament to the enduring legacy of the 100 Years' War. The Battle of Poitiers, fought on September 19, 1356, was one of the most decisive battles of the 100 Years' War. The English army, led by King Edward III and his son the Black Prince, faced the French army, led by King John II of France. The French army outnumbered the English, but the English had an advantage in their use of the longbow. The English army had landed in Normandy in July and had marched south towards Bordeaux, where they hoped to establish a permanent foothold in France. The French had gathered a large army to intercept the English and had marched north to meet them. The two armies met near the town of Poitiers, in central France. The French army was heavily armored and included many knights on horseback. They had planned to use their superior numbers to overwhelm the English. The English, on the other hand, had a smaller force, but they were highly trained and well-equipped. They were armed with the longbow, which could shoot farther and faster than the French crossbow. The battle began with a charge by the French knights, who were met by a hail of arrows from the English archers. The French knights were bogged down by the muddy terrain and were unable to charge effectively. Meanwhile, the English were able to move around and flank the French. The French suffered heavy losses, and King John was captured by the English. The battle was a devastating defeat for the French, and it led to the Treaty of Bretigny in 1360, which ended the first phase of the Hundred Years' War. The Battle of Poitiers was a turning point in the Hundred Years' War, and it demonstrated the power of the English longbow. The battle also marked the beginning of the decline of the French knightly class, which had dominated European warfare for centuries. The English victory at Poitiers paved the way for further English victories in the Hundred Years' War, and it helped to establish England as a major power in Europe. In the mid-14th century, France was rocked by a series of violent uprisings and social unrest, known as the Jacquerie. The movement took its name from the common nickname for French peasants, Jacques Bonhomme, and was driven by a deep sense of frustration and anger among the lower classes. The immediate cause of the Jacquerie was the devastation wrought by the Hundred Years' War and the Black Death, which had left many peasants struggling to survive. The war had ravaged the French countryside, causing widespread destruction and displacement, while the plague had killed off up to a third of the population. In the face of these challenges, many peasants turned to banditry, raiding the estates of the nobility in search of food and other resources. The Jacquerie began in May 1358, when a group of peasants from the Beauvais region of northern France rose up against their lords. The revolt quickly spread to other parts of the country, as bands of peasants attacked castles, burned manor houses, and murdered aristocrats and their families. The rebels were led by a variety of charismatic figures, including Guillaume Caille, who claimed to be a prophet sent by God to liberate the poor. The nobility responded to the Jacquerie with brutal force, launching a vicious campaign of repression and punishment. In many cases, the rebels were simply massacred or hunted down by armed knights and soldiers. However, the uprising had a lasting impact on French society, contributing to a sense of social and political unrest that would eventually culminate in the French Revolution. Today, the Jacquerie is remembered as a powerful symbol of the struggle between the rich and the poor, the powerful and the powerless, and the ways in which these tensions can erupt into open conflict. While the revolt was ultimately unsuccessful in its aims, it represented a turning point in the history of France and the struggle for social justice. The Hundred Years' War between England and France had been raging for decades, with both sides winning battles and suffering defeats. However, in 1428, a young peasant girl from Domremy named Joan of Arc entered the scene and turned the tide of the war in favor of the French. Joan believed she had been sent by God to drive the English out of France and to lead the French to victory. Her unshakable faith, charisma, and military tactics inspired the French soldiers and commanders. One of the most significant battles in which Joan participated was the Siege of Orléans, a strategic city on the Loire River in the Loire Valley. The city had been under siege by the English for months, and the French troops were exhausted and demoralized. However, with the arrival of Joan, the French army was reinvigorated, and morale was boosted. Joan quickly took charge of the French troops and inspired them to fight bravely. She led the troops into battle, carrying a banner depicting the image of the Virgin Mary. Her presence on the battlefield was a significant morale booster for the French soldiers. Joan also worked to lift the siege of the city by planning and leading successful sorties against the English forces. The turning point in the siege came on May 8, 1429, when Joan led a surprise attack on the English forts that surrounded Orléans. The attack was a success, and the English were forced to retreat. With the retreat of the English, the siege was lifted, and the city was saved. The Battle of Orléans was a significant turning point in the Hundred Years' War. The French had suffered a series of defeats at the hands of the English, and the Siege of Orléans was seen as the last hope for the French resistance. The victory at Orléans, led by Joan of Arc, was a morale booster for the French, who went on to win several more battles and ultimately win the war. Joan's military tactics, bravery, and charisma were critical in the French victory at the Siege of Orléans. Her accomplishments were not only significant in the war, but also played a significant role in changing the position of women in medieval society. Joan of Arc was eventually captured by the English and burned at the stake for heresy, but her legacy lives on. The 100 Years' War was one of the most significant conflicts of the medieval period. It was a series of intermittent wars, fought between England and France from 1337 to 1453. The war was characterized by long periods of truce and short bursts of fighting, and it had a profound impact on both nations. The war was fought over a variety of issues, including territorial disputes, dynastic claims, and economic interests. One of the most significant battles of the 100 Years' War was the Battle of Castellane, which took place on July 17, 1453. The battle marked the end of the war, which had lasted for more than a century. The battle was fought between the French and English forces, with the French emerging victorious. The English forces, led by John Talbot, Earl of Shrewsbury, had been campaigning in the region of Gascony, which was under English control. The French forces, under the command of Charles VII, had been attempting to recapture the region. The two armies met near the town of Castellane, and a fierce battle ensued. The French forces had a significant advantage in terms of numbers, and they also had a more modern and effective artillery. The English forces were unable to withstand the French artillery barrage, and they suffered heavy losses. John Talbot was killed in the battle, which was a significant blow to the English forces. The Battle of Castellane was the last major battle of the 100 Years' War. The war had been devastating for both England and France, and it had left both countries exhausted and in debt. The war had also led to significant changes in military tactics and technology. The use of the longbow, which had been the weapon of choice for the English forces, was gradually phased out in favor of artillery and other firearms. The legacy of the 100 Years' War was profound. The war had cemented the idea of the nation-state, and had created a sense of national identity in both England and France. It had also contributed to the decline of feudalism and the rise of centralized monarchies. The war had also had a significant impact on the development of the English language, with many French words and phrases entering the English lexicon. In conclusion, the Battle of Castellane was a significant moment in the history of the 100 Years' War. It marked the end of a long and devastating conflict, and paved the way for significant changes in military tactics and technology. The legacy of the war was profound, and it had a significant impact on the development of England and France, as well as on the development of European society as a whole. In the early 15th century, England and France were locked in a bitter struggle for power known as the 100 Years' War. The conflict had been raging on and off since the mid-14th century, and by the time of Henry V's ascension to the English throne in 1413, both sides were eager for a final resolution. Despite some early successes, the English were facing mounting challenges as they struggled to maintain their position in France. One of the key turning points in the 100 Years' War came in 1420, with the signing of the Treaty of Troyes. This treaty, which was negotiated by Henry V and his advisors, was intended to bring an end to the conflict by establishing a new joint English-French monarchy. Under the terms of the treaty, Henry V was recognized as the heir to the French throne, and was betrothed to Catherine, the daughter of the French King Charles VI. When Charles died a few years later, Henry and Catherine's infant son was recognized as the king of both England and France. At first it appeared that the Treaty of Troyes had brought an end to the 100 Years' War, and that England had emerged as the dominant power in France. However, the situation soon deteriorated. Many French nobles were unhappy with the terms of the treaty, and continued to fight against the English. Meanwhile, Henry V died unexpectedly in 1422, leaving his infant son as the king of both England and France. The new English king, Henry VI, was too young to rule, and his advisors struggled to maintain control over the French territories that had been won by his father. In 1429, the French forces, led by the teenage Joan of Arc, won a decisive victory at the Siege of Orléans. This victory marked a turning point in the war, and within a few years the English had been driven out of France entirely. The Treaty of Troyes, which had once seemed like a triumph for the English, was ultimately a failure. Despite the efforts of Henry V and his advisors, they were unable to establish a lasting English presence in France, and the 100 Years' War continued for several more decades. However, the treaty did have significant consequences for the English monarchy. By establishing a new joint monarchy with France, the treaty laid the groundwork for centuries of conflict and rivalry between the two nations, even as it brought an end to one of the most protracted and bitter wars in European history. The 100 Years' War between England and France was one of the most significant conflicts of the Middle Ages. It was a long and brutal struggle that lasted from 1337 to 1453, and involved a series of battles, sieges, and skirmishes on both land and sea. One of the key factors that helped the English to emerge victorious in the war was the rise of the English Navy, which played a critical role in securing English control of the Channel and the surrounding seas. The English Navy began to emerge as a powerful force in the late 14th century, during the reign of King Richard II. At this time, the English Channel was a crucial route for trade and commerce between England and the rest of Europe, and control of the sea was essential for maintaining the English economy and supporting the war effort against France. The English Navy was therefore tasked with protecting English shipping, intercepting enemy vessels, and supporting the movement of English troops and supplies across the Channel. One of the key innovations that helped to make the English Navy so successful was the use of longbows and other missile weapons, which gave English ships a distinct advantage in ranged combat. English ships were also designed with a low profile and a narrow beam, which made them faster and more maneuverable than their French counterparts. In addition, the English Navy was highly disciplined and well-trained, with a system of ranks and a strict code of conduct that helped to maintain order and discipline on board. Despite the many successes of the English Navy, it was not invincible, and the French were able to mount several successful naval campaigns against the English. In particular, the Battle of La Rochelle in 1372 was a major setback for the English Navy, as it marked the first time that a French fleet had defeated an English fleet in open water. However, the English were able to recover from this defeat and rebuild their naval strength, thanks in part to the support of wealthy merchants and other private investors who saw the value of a strong English navy for trade and commerce. By the end of the 100 Years' War, the English Navy had established itself as one of the most powerful naval forces in Europe. Its successes in the war helped to cement England's position as a major European power, and its innovations in naval warfare would continue to influence the development of naval strategy and tactics for centuries to come. The legacy of the English Navy would be felt not only in England, but throughout the world, as English naval power helped shape the course of global history. The 100 Years' War was a seminal period in the history of both England and France, lasting from 1337 to 1453. Over the course of this conflict, the two nations engaged in a series of bloody battles and sieges, vying for control of territories in northern France. The war was marked by many important events and figures, from the Black Death to Joan of Arc, and had a profound impact on the course of European history. The war began as a result of disputes over the succession to the French throne, which had been left in question after the death of Charles IV. When Edward III of England, who was Charles's nephew, made a claim to the French crown, it sparked a conflict that would last for more than a century. The early years of the war saw English victories at Crécy and Poitiers, but the tide began to turn in the late 14th century, as the French were able to mount a successful resistance against English advances. One of the most important turning points in the war was the Siege of Orléans, which took place in 1429. At this time, the French army was struggling to resist English advances, and the English seemed poised to take control of much of France. However, a young peasant girl named Joan of Arc emerged, claiming to have been sent by God to save France. She rallied the French troops and led them to a decisive victory at Orléans, which was the first step in a series of victories that would eventually lead to the end of the war. The final battle of the 100 Years' War was fought at Castillon in 1453, and resulted in a decisive French victory. This battle marked the end of an era, as England lost control of its territories in northern France and was forced to refocus its energies on domestic affairs. The war had been incredibly costly for both sides, and had left a deep scar on the psyche of the nations involved. The 100 Years' War had a profound impact on the course of European history, in terms of both military strategy and national identity. The war was characterized by the emergence of new technologies and tactics, such as the longbow and the cannon, which would go on to shape the way wars were fought in Europe for centuries to come. Additionally, the war played a major role in the development of national identities in both England and France, as the two nations engaged in a bitter struggle for dominance. In England, the 100 Years' War became a symbol of national pride and strength, and was seen as a defining moment in the country's history. It also helped to establish the importance of the English Navy, which played a key role in many of the war's most important battles. In France, the war was seen as a period of hardship and suffering, but also as a moment of national resilience and unity. The legacy of the war can still be seen in the present day, as it helped to shape the national identities and military strategies of both countries for centuries to come. Chapter 7. The Renaissance: Art, Culture, and Politics in Italy. The Renaissance was a period of significant intellectual and cultural transformation that occurred in Europe from the 14th to the 17th century. Its origins can be traced back to the cities of Italy in the late Middle Ages, where economic growth, political stability, and a revival of classical learning laid the foundation for the development of new ideas and artistic expression. One of the most significant factors that contributed to the Renaissance was the rise of the urban merchant class. These wealthy patrons provided financial support to artists, scholars, and scientists, who in turn produced works of art and literature that reflected the changing values of the time. The growth of trade and commerce also led to increased contact with other cultures, including the Islamic world, which brought new ideas and technologies to Europe. At the same time, the Renaissance was characterized by a revival of interest in classical learning, particularly the works of ancient Greece and Rome. This renewed interest in the classical past led to a rejection of medieval scholasticism and a new emphasis on the individual, rational thought, and empirical observation. The printing press, invented by Johannes Gutenberg in the mid-15th century, played a significant role in the dissemination of these ideas and helped to democratize knowledge. The arts also experienced a major transformation during the Renaissance. Artists of the time began to use techniques such as perspective, chiaroscuro, and the use of light and shadow to create a more realistic depiction of the world. The development of oil painting allowed for greater detail and depth in portraits, landscapes, and religious scenes. The patronage of wealthy merchants and rulers allowed artists such as Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael to produce some of the most iconic works of art in history. The Renaissance was also marked by significant changes in religion and politics. The Protestant Reformation challenged the authority of the Catholic Church and led to the emergence of new religious movements. Political power shifted from the feudal nobility to centralized states as monarchs such as Henry VIII, Francis I, and Charles V sought to consolidate their power and control over their subjects. In conclusion, the Renaissance was a period of profound transformation in European society, culture, and thought. Its origins can be traced back to the urban centers of Italy in the late Middle Ages, where a revival of classical learning, economic growth, and the rise of the merchant class created the conditions for the development of new ideas and artistic expression. The legacy of the Renaissance can be seen in the lasting influence of its art, literature, and philosophy, which continue to inspire and captivate us to this day. In the late medieval period, a new intellectual and cultural movement emerged in Italy that would profoundly shape the course of European history. Known as the Renaissance, this movement was characterized by a renewed interest in the classical heritage of Greece and Rome, an emphasis on humanistic values, and a new spirit of individualism and innovation. At the heart of the Renaissance was a group of scholars and artists who sought to rediscover and revive the achievements of the ancient world, while also exploring new ways of thinking about the world around them. One of the most important aspects of the Renaissance was the rise of humanism, a philosophical and cultural movement that emphasized the importance of human values, reason, and individualism. Humanists rejected the scholasticism of the medieval period, which placed a heavy emphasis on religious doctrine and formal logic, and instead focused on the study of human nature, history, and culture. They sought to reconcile the ideals of classical antiquity with Christian thought, and to apply the insights of the past to contemporary problems and challenges. One of the most influential humanists of the Renaissance was the Italian poet and scholar Francesco Petrarch. Petrarch was deeply interested in the literature and culture of ancient Rome, and his efforts to rediscover and study classical texts played a key role in the revival of interest in the classical world. His writings also helped to establish a new style of literary expression that emphasized individualism and personal experience, and paved the way for the development of modern Italian and European literature. Another important humanist of the Renaissance was the Italian author and scholar Giovanni Boccaccio. Boccaccio was a keen observer of human nature, and his works explored themes such as love, friendship, and morality. He is best known for his masterpiece, the Decameron, a collection of 100 stories that depict the social and moral issues of the day. The Decameron was a groundbreaking work that helped to establish the literary and intellectual culture of the Renaissance. In addition to their literary and cultural achievements, humanists also played a key role in the development of new ideas and concepts that would have a profound impact on the modern world. They were interested in science, philosophy, and mathematics, and they sought to apply these fields to the